do that. Is it? All right. I think it's actually working now. Is it? Is it recording? Is it recording? You guys say things.
I'm
See if that
saying
works.
things. Hello, I am a person that talks probably a lot.
All right. It actually is recording. We've got this.
Woo!
I already says I'm fired. So.
I don't know if I'm fired, if you're fired, or who's fired. Because right before that, I had thanked Everin. I can't speak. Rin on your behalf.
Well, that means that it's your fault. I think that means it's your fault.
God dang it! This is what like I'm trying to help you people. You should take a page out of Enix's books and do nothing.
All right. But the recording is working. I can see it. It's working. So.
Do you at least want to know what Rin said to you? That was for thanking. Do you at least want to know?
No, I'm going back to the chat. Thank you, Everin.
There you go. You did it.
All right. So that is all set, and we are exactly 1 minute early, and the recording's going, and I think this is going better than I expected.
Well, it hasn't burst into flames, so that's nice.
Yes, I did. I did, Everin. I said thank you.
Everin. Is that what it was? Did I get it right? Did I do it?
Yeah, probably.
I don't know. I'm trying.
So, this is the first of the SE Fandom Unity event podcast, plural. This is the writers' chat. It's just a comfy introduction to the event as a whole. Next week we will be having Quentin Flynn joining us. I'm trying to teach him how to use the app. He's having difficulty.
Pretty daunting. There's a lot of features now that weren't there before, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the different links for all of the different communities and stuff is. Anyway, it's a little overwhelming, but we've got a week. We've got a week to figure it out.
Yeah.
So this is the Writers Podcast. We have with us me, I'm Lee, and we have Nate, who's the only one who's been talking so far. And we have Van/Guile, depending on what community you know him from.
And I'm actually here now.
He's actually here.
You're real. I'm happy.
And the final person in the chat is my recorder. So,
hello, recorder. Hello.
Everybody say hello to Berry Boy.
He's very quiet.
He is plugged into Pira, and recording this for posterity. My goal is to record all of them. So if you can't attend one of the Q&As every Monday, I'm going to be putting up a post announcing what Saturday's event is going to be, and from there you can comment questions if you're not going to be there. So I'm going to start off with just going over what the chat rules are. It's really basic stuff. Don't spam. Don't fight. No NSFW. Be respectful. It's Square Enix Amino rules.
Yeah.
If you have a specific question that you want us to answer, or something that you want us to address, bold it. You put bracket B and closing bracket at the very beginning of your line to do that. Try not to bold a bunch of random statements because it defeats the purpose of making it easier for us to see it. We have our moderators in here. We have Kyrie, Noodle, Sora, and Matt are with us right now, and also me and Guile are curators, but
I am unimportant, yes!
You're the guest.
I'm the guest. It's great. I don't have to do anything, and there's no pressure on me. Wait, I have to do lots of things. Anyway.
So if if the moderators tell you to stop doing a thing, just stop, please. And when we do the Q&A portion, then you can ask us anything about any kind of writing. You can ask us about our interactions with the Square Enix fandom if you wanted to. It can be about role-playing also. Between the three of us, we've got a decent amount of role-playing experience, especially Guile is the most out of all of us. And most importantly, have fun. I hope that this is an enjoyable little event for all of us. So, do we want to? You do not have to have a microphone to join the call. You can listen without a microphone. If you click on the green bar, then I know that this isn't being reached. Hold on. Click.
I think you can do it on any of the any phone, everyone.
I think so. Well, I'm top dog in that picture. Hooray.
Technical difficulties. Always a good time.
Always. I'm wondering if they have the little, like... I'm gonna go back and look at that picture. Whoa. No, they have
You should be able to hear if you're in the call.
Oh, they haven't hit join in the bottom center yet.
No, you don't have to. Join makes it so you talk. You should be able to hear.
Okay. And it's grayed out for a reason. Yeah, I really don't know.
That's strange.
Technical issues. Is their volume off? That's all I can think of.
Yeah, either volume or
Kim's brought it up. Kim's is a genius.
yeah, either or,
well, that was unexpected.
What happened? You good?
Probably I got a package. Someone threw something at my door, rang my doorbell, so that sounds like package delivery. Yes.
Oh, well, congratulations on your brand new package.
Thanks. It's a box of food. Now you guys know everything you need to know about me.
I'm really jealous of that.
I'm the kind of person who has food delivered to my house.
So, let's see. Oh, Itara knows what's up. Itara's here to save the day.
I was gonna say that was that's the thing in the corner. I checked it when I saw the screenshot, and it's there. I don't know. Maybe it's like if Sora's phone breaks down like different volume settings. I'm wondering if it's like the master volume's all the way up, but the media volume's all the way down. I've done that a couple times.
Not mine, but. So I'm going to go to the post itself.
Oh yeah, this actually happened during the interview that happened on KHA, the Just Encountered interview. What people ended up doing was closing out of Amino and then coming back in. Basically, when in doubt, restart. That's IT 101.
Restart your entire phone. I don't know.
Now, that might be a little much, but
At this point, desperate times call for desperate measures? I have no idea.
All right. So overall, I think that we're gonna try and get rolling, and hopefully people can help in the comment chats. I have that going. Hi, Yams. So, do we want to do our personal intros and then roll right into what our first topic is going to be?
yeah, let's go for that.
Yeah.
All right. Who wants to start?
Nate wants to start.
Nate always wants to start.
How do you guys just know this stuff? I didn't even say anything. All right, so spoiler, I'm Nate, and I've actually I've been in writing classes since about middle school, but I've probably been writing horrible things well before that, somewhere around 10. So I've been writing for a stupid amount of time, and I have a stupid level of education in it. It's actually really fun though, and mostly I do a lot of like dialogue and character voice stuff. So I actually really like roleplay for that reason. It kind of plays to the things I like most. So that's I think a good enough introduction. I don't know. I'm a nerd. Hello.
All right. Ben?
What is my turn?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Right.
you.
So I am the newest writer among the three of us. I have been role-playing for basically forever, and those skills actually transfer over to writing really well. So I had a little bit of a head start there. I think I'm the only one of us three who did not go to school for creative writing.
Van, scream. You've been told you're quiet.
What?
Talk a little louder.
Oh god,
A
that's
little
my
louder.
weakness. Can you hear me now?
Nope. We hear you less.
As I said, I think you actually got quieter.
Does this work?
That's better.
This is better?
Yes.
Yeah, that's better. There we go.
Alright,
Continue.
so if I just talk directly into the microphone, you guys can hear me. Sweet.
Yes.
Yes.
So I've got my phone upside down, practically in my mouth, so that you guys can hear me. Just so you guys know what's going on.
Clean it when you're done. Gross.
This
Please.
is a visual experience.
Yeah, close your eyes and we'll describe exactly what's going on.
This is
So,
what writers are for, right?
Yeah, totes.
How much did you guys hear?
Just to give a brief overview, it's on recording just fine. But
Oh, okay. So, like I said, I'm the only one of the three presenters today who has not gone to any like extra schooling for creative writing. I'm basically self-taught, lots of trial and error. So, yeah, that's not much to say on my end.
all right.
Lee, introduce yourself.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
The bus is coming for you too.
So my name is Lee. I studied creative writing and psychology, so character analysis and characters, people are a passion of mine, so to speak. I can hear myself echoing from a phone in the other room, and it's very distressing. But I do online writing, tutoring, and teaching. I like writing lessons for people to have access to free writing-based education, and I've been writing since I don't actually even remember. I've been writing specifically Square Enix related content since 2004, 2005. And I'm enamored with the idea of helping new writers be able to be better writers by using fandom. That's one of my one of my goals. I have a miniature writing class that I post very tragically infrequently on Kingdom Hearts Amino. I used to be the leader of the writing club over there. I'm one of the leaders of the writing guild here and on KWR. And
Bye, Emmy.
bye,
Enjoy the art.
Emmy. Have fun at the art.
I love art.
I don't have much to say about myself. I'm not particularly good at this.
It's funny. We write about other people, not ourselves. Don't scare me.
That's the point of being a writer, is that I don't have to think about me.
True facts.
All right, who's eating?
Me. Are you shocked?
Nate!
No.
What?
I had to put my brownie down for this. So today we're going to be doing a mini lesson / overview on character voice, is what we decided. Yes.
Yes.
Indian food that I made myself, to answer you, Shinya. I made chicken tikka masala. Tikka masala, yep.
You
I
are
had a cosmic
needlessly
brownie.
fancy.
Yeah, I am.
I'm having
So-
tea for lunch.
God damn it. So, character voice.
Right.
Yeah.
Character voice is a writing term that means not just the way that a character sounds or the inflection in which they speak. It's the way that they interact with the world around them. So it's everything from gestures to word choice to the way that they think, the way that they process information, the way that they take in the world around them. It's something that's an extremely important skill. You hear your teachers in English classes just constantly talking about voice, constantly. There's a slight difference between character voice and writer's voice, but we're going to be talking about character voice in particular because it's more applicable to fan works.
I mean, an example of that is just keep this Square Enix related, is that Axel would interact with something differently than Kairi, than Riku, etc.
If you put two characters into the same situation, then they would react in different ways, even if those different ways are subtle.
As well, the way those different ways are portrayed would be written out differently. There would be different word choice, different weight on what the narrative would focus on.
Which is particularly important when you're doing roleplay, because either in your description of actions or in the dialogue itself, then depending on what kind of roleplay you're doing, then your character voice is going to be distinctive based on what character you're working with and what the character has experienced as well. That's why I like AUs so much, because you get to see how characters evolve in reaction to different stimuli.
Oh yeah, you can have the same character do something completely different, and I don't know, I love that stuff. That's the psychology coming out, though.
Yeah, I know how much the three of us love to be like, hey, so if we took Riku from this universe and we introduced him to this person from this universe, then how would he react differently than, this original Riku would, stuff like that.
There is one constant across all universes. Zigbar's a jerk.
AU where Zigbar is a nice guy.
We tried that, and he just pretends to be nice like other people around him.
I love Keybreaker. I love the Keybreaker AU so much.
I love it so much. Whatever Aqua says.
Aqua would say.
Except about people she's romantically involved with. I wouldn't say that.
The color white. That's what good people would say, right?
Right? That's my favorite color now.
Anyway.
Let's bring this back.
Anyway.
So, finding a character's voice. I did a brief lesson on Kingdom Hearts Amino, which I can link towards the end of this. Then about how to find a character's voice by identifying their core traits. I did an example by doing analysis of one of the core tenets of Axel's character, which is obsession. If you have an Axel, then there has to be some sort of obsessive nature to him. It's very, very integral to his character. A lot of his interactions with the world are very contingent on that obsession that he feels, either throwing himself completely into someone romantically, throwing himself completely into
Yes, Sora made it in.
things like this. Oh dear. Yes. Welcome,
I love how
Sora.
you're like 154th British right now, and it's rocking my world.
154. So
it's great.
What a fraction.
So that should be that's the general overview of that particular lesson. So I don't know if anyone else has anything else to add on that part.
Personally, character. Do you want to go first, or should I?
You go. You're talking. That's awesome.
For me personally, character voice is one of the most integral parts of writing. If the way that the writing is done doesn't reflect who the character is, then I feel to a point that it doesn't correctly capture what's going on. For example, if you have a character who's very in the moment, very lives by instinct, you're going to want to think with what they would physically respond with. A good way to do that is to write first by sensation, to say what's physically going on, and then moving on from there. They would be perceiving, what information they would be taking in, rather than focusing on them physically being there, analyzing that the events going on around them, rather than not.
I do have a warning that there is like a section of the recording in the middle of your speech that like exploded. So
what?
It was the recording itself. I tried to take the case off of my phone because it was overheating and I didn't want it to turn the recording off, and it just like blah all over your speech. So I apologize.
Oh, that's fine. It's all good.
The other thing I would say is that the beautiful thing about character voice in general is that it can take basically any scene and any action and make it interesting. I mean, one of the role plays that I was in, I basically played the big boss, like the final boss. So literally no one was going to see me forever. And honestly, you just have him doing things on his own, away from everyone else. And it just, don't die. But
I'm trying my best.
Yeah. The posts seemed to be very well received, despite the fact that no one could interact with them, because I was staying true to his actual perspective on things. That said, I also wanted to say occasionally characters will throw you curveballs. And if something feels off in the voice to you, it's always good to look at something closer, because it could just be something in that character that you haven't discovered yet, a trait you didn't notice right away. Or maybe you're putting something there that doesn't belong there.
Mm-hmm. One thing that all three of us have encountered in our times writing together is that we've thank you, Everin.
Thank you.
Right? Like, it's so sweet.
One of the things that we've encountered is that we will be like, it would be so amazing if this character did this thing. Can you imagine if this character said this to this person? And we try to set up the scene beforehand, and we cannot make them do it. And as disappointing as that is, we find out a lot about that character that we can't make them do that. Or they try and spin it a completely different way, or they need additional pushing that we didn't think that they would need. And you learn a lot about the character's voice from forcing them into situations that they don't want to listen to you.
Well, it's killing Guile too, so it makes you feel better.
Hey.
But, I mean, honestly, there's no such thing as, like, a failed draft to that end. Like, there's no such thing as something you did wrong. You learn from everything.
Mm-hmm.
Ev, if you want to share near the end, I'll give it. Or I'm sure others will give it a read too, but after the podcast. How's that sound?
Yeah, we're all the kind of people who like to read other people's writing. So
Yeah.
I give feedback on a very, very regular basis.
And honestly, there's like, I'd be hard pressed to say there's a single writing that like people don't like. I mean, there's 7 billion of them. One of them's bound to like it. So
that's thinking positively.
I mean, there are books out there that I don't like that other people do, and vice versa. So, I mean, clearly, some people do, some people don't, and that's not necessarily a disagreement. I don't know.
Yeah, me and Ben were just talking the other day about Full Metal Alchemist is allowed on Square Enix Amino. It is the anime is produced by Square Enix, so it actually can be posted here.
Cheer. I'm so professional.
Something that me and Guile were just speaking of the other day was the fact that he really, really connected with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but it was meh to me. It didn't really stick with me, but I feel like if I reread it now, then it might stick with me a completely different way. That's part of the reason that I like the idea of rereading fictions at different points in your life, revisiting stories that you've tried to write at different points in your life.
Absolutely. I mean, stories are like little time capsules, and you're the one that changes as you read them, so I agree with that completely.
Like you guys saw.
Oh,
yeah. No, go ahead.
You can go on. All right. Similarly, it's really important to continue writing as you go forward through your life, because writing is like a time capsule. You're going to change around it, but you'll only be the you are once. So make sure that no matter how awful you feel like your writing is right now, this is your voice at the moment. So write it down.
That's beautiful. I'm going to cry. But first, a car alarm's going to go off outside my house. Sorry.
So, if you guys want to keep discussing character voice, then I'll be right back.
All right. Bye forever.
What kind of anime is allowed? I think Fullmetal Alchemist, Black Butler. Oh, you have a list?
Mm-hmm. I have a list.
All right, go grab your list.
Yeah, let me get it. Because I have a list of Solito is one of them. Black Butler is one of them.
You're British today.
Index.
Fullmetal Alchemist. Durarara, Bakano.
Those ones are good. I like them.
I love Bakano.
I know.
I post a lot, so I'm gonna. Oh, there it is.
You are so British today. I love it.
Just a little bit British every day.
That class going on.
I'm trying not to kill your ears by coughing into the mic.
That link, Everin, is all of the anime that's been produced by Square Enix.
And yes, I said British. That was me. Although Lee's speaking British, is fine. I think this is the part we're supposed to keep talking, Van.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not talking, then somebody else do it.
All right.
Trying to finish this.
All right, you finished that.
So another thing I've noticed with character voice in general is occasionally, like, finding your common ground with a character is a great way to warm up and get into their brain space, if you will. So, usually something like, Demix is a goof, I'm a goof, I roleplay Demix, hooray! Like, I find my common ground with that character, and I use that.
Finding your in.
Yes.
So my
the in you find. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
The in you find with your character might be completely unexpected. For example, to use Nate as an example again, she's a huge goofball, so she writes and role plays as Demix, but she's also extremely protective. So it's a completely different feel. It's a completely different tone, but you can still find you're in with an amazing amount of characters through that.
Because people are multifaceted, you can find something that you identify with in essentially any character. The in is actually, I believe, a term that you started, Guile. You were the one who
Cool.
told me
I'm
about
smart.
it. Referring to finding an aspect of a character that gives you access to their brain space. I believe that you were the first person who told me about that, like who phrased it that way to me. Can you hear me?
I think
He's dead.
Kyle? Oh God.
What?
You've been asked a question twice now.
I've talked to you twice.
Oh, sorry. Can you repeat that?
No.
No.
No, actually, I can't.
All right, cool.
But once you have an aspect of a character that lets you have access to one of their aspects, and you can get a lot out of them from there, because you have something that you identify with, and from having something you identify with in a character, you can understand where they get the rest of their traits.
Yeah. Once you have that first in, it's kind of a domino effect. Although it also depends on the character too. Some characters are a little more defensive than others, so they might take a little more work.
Mm-hmm. Trying to get into the headspace of one of my OCs, a.r.guile, is really, really complicated because she has ADHD, which I do not have.
I do. Pick me.
So it's actually one of the things that's really difficult for me to identify with her, because I have to try and understand why she thinks things the way that she does, which takes a little bit more work on my part. But then with me putting in that effort to find her voice, then I'm able to write her better. And the same goes with like canon characters that you're writing fan works of.
Yeah, and honestly, like, the nice thing that I enjoy about fan fiction is that everyone's interpretation of characters is usually just like a little bit different. They'll have common ground, of course, because it's the same character, but there's just a little bit different. My interpretation of Demix might be different from someone else's interpretation of Demix. Same thing for any other fandom. If I might think of Ron Weasley as one way and someone else might have another opinion. It's interesting.
Different,
So
and also...
Sorry.
And also when
darn, we're so good at this. You go.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I got this. There's really no such thing as like a bad interpretation of a character, because you're just presenting your perspective on a canon character. I mean, there's always going to be that risk of someone who comes along and goes like, I don't like it. You're like, well, then don't read it. So like, it's fine.
I've actually found a pretty interesting way to start writing a specific character. If you watch one of the scenes with them in them and write out what's going on in that scene, you already have a framework for what's happening. You know the dialogue, you know what's going on. But the way that they act in that scene internally is going to be a facet that you yourself put in. So if you're just starting out with a certain character, then that might be a way you learn how to write for them.
Mm-hmm.
And working with fan works specifically.
Mm-hmm. And Nate writes an absolutely incredible Demix. And the last point that I want to touch on, sort of cycling back to what Nate was saying, is that that different in terms of different people writing the same character different ways. There are different aspects of most canon characters. They're multifaceted, just like people. So some people will accentuate different aspects of the character that they identify with, or that they feel is more important than somebody else. Different people will go to different aspects of the character that they fill in their headcanons for, such like Aqua in particular, Aqua from Kingdom Hearts. I emphasize a lot of her maternal nature, because that's something that I find really, really interesting in a female character. That they're maternal, but they're still able to be strong, and she sort of tries to cut herself off emotionally to not be. She has a lot of struggle with her duty versus her maternal nature, and that's something that I like to emphasize on a lot when I write for her. But somebody else might really hate the fact that she's really maternal, or feel like that's not a really important aspect of her character, as opposed to her being really, really strong or really, really smart. So they might emphasize that in their writing, and that might not jive with me as much, because I feel like that, to me, is a more important core trait. But as long as it's present in some capacity, then they haven't written her wrong. They've just written her in a way that doesn't fit with the way that I believe her to be.
Exactly. That's a great example, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
You say with your mouth full.
You say. So Everin did ask a question that's a very valid writing related question, and it's should I have help editing with when I'm writing? You can. I do like the idea of running. I like running things that I've written by people that are close to me first, or running it by somebody to check over. I usually run my stuff by either Nate or Guile in particular, and they check me for spelling errors and stuff. But it's something that I also like to be able to help with pointing out inconsistencies in character writing. Not to just to use a recent example, I checked over something that Nate wrote the other day, and I pointed out that because she had been writing this one character, this word in particular didn't seem to fit with the one she was writing now. It fit with the character that she had been writing like the day before, and she was able to adjust it because I was able to pick it out.
I feel so attacked right now.
I just came out here to have a good time.
If you are going to be editing your own work, it's a good idea to let it rest for a few days before you start going through and picking sentences apart and reworking it. Because looking at it with a fresher pair of eyes is absolutely invaluable. I wouldn't say you need to let it sit for 3 years, but just give it 2-3 days so that you're not looking at the same sentences that you did before, because you'll either look at it with the same eyes that you did and say, yeah, this is fine. Or you'll look at it and say, oh, God, no, stop everything, delete it all. Both are bad.
Yeah, that's I know by the time usually I hit the end of my first draft, I'm like, well, I hate this. I want to burn it all. So I honestly can't edit when I hit the end of a draft, because I'll just be like, yep, Control-A, delete, and just start over.
Something that I had to overcome when I was a young writer, and the second I overcame it, I became an infinitely better writer overall. Is, as stupid as you feel, read your work out loud.
Yes.
You feel like a dumbass, and you like. Especially when you're a younger writer and you're like, this is great, and then you read it out loud and you're like, bleh! But the thing that, and I did see your question, Kimsey, and I will get to it in just a second here. The thing that especially with dialogue, you won't realize when you see it on paper that it doesn't sound like human speech unless you say it out loud.
Yeah, it's honestly the best way to like test and see if your dialogue feels genuine, if it flows well. It's something that has a strange level of impact, honestly, on something that's read. But I mean, people don't exist in vacuums. They hear other people speak all day, so something will strike them as odd.
Additionally, with you'll be able to more easily catch spelling errors. You'll be able to catch, incomplete sentences that you started a sentence, and then you're like, oh, but I also want to write this, so you left it in the middle of one. You'll be able to catch weird word choice that doesn't flow correctly. Reading your work out loud does so much good.
Yes.
It's so helpful.
All right. Any more on this, or do we want to get to Kimsey's question?
I think that does that answer your question, Everin?
All right. Cool.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Kinsey asked, do you have any tips if you have ideas but you can't get them from in your head? I don't know who's here. But
It's not me. I didn't do it.
So, my something that I personally do is I write a list of bullet points. Hi, Lin. I write a list of bullet points of things that I want to try and remember to write. If you have a long form scene that you want to cover, then the easiest way to do it is to just write out all of the bullet points in order of what you want to happen in that scene, and then you can fill it in later. That's the way that's the easiest way to write action scenes in particular. But if I have an idea that I want to get down, then I make a note of it, and then I try and find either an into a sentence, things like that. Oh, thank you.
That's similar to how I go about it. I am not as organized a writer as Lee is. So what I do is I find the first thing about a scene that catches my attention, whether it's the idea of footsteps echoing or something that someone's saying. Usually it's something physical or some sensation. But if you start there and just build out from there, even if you end up going back and changing everything, at least you've got something down on the page that you can work with. Because the worst feeling in the world is looking at empty white space and needing to put the first thing down in it.
Mm-hmm. I had a piece of imagery is a great in. I had when I wrote "What Does the Rock Say," the Wisconsin story. The first image that I had was I wanted to really establish how miserable Axel was. So I just imagined I tried to think, what is the most miserable that I have ever been, and it was walking through slush with holes in my shoes. So I had the imagery of trudging through knee-high snow and slush, just all of the water getting into your shoes, and you're so sad. And that was the imagery that got me into the story, because I was able to get into his head. I was able to establish a little bit of what had gone on a little bit before that, and it was a fantastic in. A single picture is such a good in for starting a story, because you can write anything before that picture and you can write anything behind that picture, and even if you had it taken, even if you have to take it out at the end, then it still got you into the story.
And that's an excellent point there, is that there's, like I said, there's no point of wasted writing. You just take it out. I mean, I have a document that's basically just called writing dump, and I just take things that I didn't end up using and throw it in there, because I never get rid of any of my old writing, because that is still the thing that started the scene. So it's still important to keep, even though it's not part of the official ending final draft. It helped me. So I keep it.
I've even reused things that I've written for other stories that didn't make it into new ones.
Yeah, and not to mention, still, every writing style is different. So imagery would be a big inspiration for Lee, but I usually start my stories with a line of dialogue, whereas Vanna might be a sound, like footsteps. And sometimes I start with imagery instead. So it's not like there's the nice thing about writing being an art is that it's not necessarily a right or wrong answer. you can get your inspiration from anywhere. And turning an idea into writing can be as simple as just writing out the scene of your character walking with slush in their shoes and how miserable they are about it.
Yeah, everybody in writing has something that really speaks to them. For Ven, it is sensation. For you, it is dialogue, and for me, it's imagery. So, we're all going to find our in potentially in what is somebody else's strength, but we're most likely going to head into whatever our particular strength is first.
Going in with your best foot, you know? Oh, shit. What do I do? Stop.
I saw your question,
I pressed a
Evelyn.
button.
We're going to do Tara's next, but we will get to yours. So Itara asked, Kimsey, does that answer your question? Yes. So Atara asked, what advice do you have for finding inspiration, especially if you haven't written something in months? Prompts, drabbles.
That's something that I actually just faced. When I left the writing club, I immediately lost all what do you call it? Like inspiration to actually put words down. And I only started writing again because something that someone said at random struck me. And prompts are really effective for some people.
And there are a ton of blogs out there with writing prompts too.
Something else something that works for me, an imagery-based person, is just going onto like Google Images and just search a random keyword and just like look at pictures until you want to describe what something looks like. Fanworks in particular, it's really nice and helpful to get inspiration when you have something that you can like latch onto. Like if you're, say, making yourself a cup of tea, then you can think to yourself, all right, which character from this thing that I write, usually it's Kingdom Hearts for me, who would be making this kind of tea? What does this flavor of food that I'm eating remind me of? Who would be eating this? You know, random things like that can get me to write a sentence even can help a lot. Prompt words, on Kingdom Hearts Amino, I run occasionally a monthly 100-word prompt set thing, where it's just a bunch of keywords that are meant to just kickstart you into something. So like random words like destiny or forgiveness, that can be enough. Or even just looking at something that is an already completed work and taking a scene out of it and trying to put somebody else into that person's shoes, like a scene from a movie or a game, and being like, what if this were Edward Elric instead of somebody else, whether it's the actual person in the scene?
But basically, as long as you... Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you go. Go.
All right. Basically, once you get the block out, once you get whatever's in the way of writing out, you're going to have a lot easier of a time going forward from there.
And I've tried a few
different
things.
You guys can talk.
Okay, I got this. I figured it out. So I've tried a few different things before when like my writing is stuck, so to speak. Occasionally, honestly, I'll change from a laptop to a notebook just because for some reason staring at a screen isn't working for me and I just need to physically write instead. So there's a lot of different things that it could be, and there's never really like they're all worth trying. So inspiration can be found anywhere, turning your idea into physical writing. Try anything and everything. Some things I've done before is I'll just grab a document and I'll start typing about a character making a sandwich or what they would do at a grocery store, or if I just throw them in the middle of a war zone. It depends on how mean I'm feeling that day, I guess. So, actually,
something
Have you ever been to a
I have
grocery store
template.
on a Sunday? That is a war zone.
It is a war zone. Whew, especially if it's Easter.
something along that vein is especially when you haven't written in a long time, one of the things that I think is really important is to finish a thing. So snapshot prompts like the ones that we run here on Square Enix Amino can be really helpful. Write a sentence, write a bullet point list, write something. So one of the prompts that we had was write 3 fortune cookies. Just nonsense, garbled fortune cookie language. Write 3 fortune cookies in a week. The one that we had last was write down a character's philosophy. It can be just a sentence. You can we did an interview prompt, things like that, to where you even if you're writing a small thing, what matters is that you wrote something, and that will snowball on itself.
And if you're the kind of person who benefits from a deadline, a slight case of pressure, role-playing is also really helpful because it's not necessarily quality, but you do have to, you don't pressure yourself to make it perfect, but you do have to get it out in a timely fashion so that other people can respond. So that's another thing that has helped me in the past too, is otherwise I'm just stalling and I'll never do it. But if I know someone's counting on me, then I'll make it.
Role-playing is also great because you have people right there that you can bounce ideas off of. You have instant feedback for whatever you've got. And it's also social, so there you go.
Yeah, so someone goes, oh, you're being antisocial. You can say, no, look, I'm talking to people. Oh, what now?
You haven't eaten in 3 weeks. Itara, does that answer your question? Oh, I assume that answered her question.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Oh, Itara is typing.
Ooh.
Yes.
So the other one was...
the next one was from Everin.
From Everin, yep. Do you like or write fan fiction? And if so, what kind? I do write fan fiction. I write a lot of fan fiction. I love fan fiction. I think that it really needs to be legitimized as a really important step in a young writer's life, because it gives you so much to work with, to be working with established characters. There's the lesson that I'm currently writing on Kingdom Hearts Amino is about why fan fiction is important, and there are so many aspects, and I'm going to
Why don't you give us a couple of the bullet points?
All right. So one aspect in particular is that with a fandom, you have a lot of room to work with, because more people are interested in this thing, and it's a lot easier to get feedback. It's a lot easier to get people to engage with your work because they're also interested in this thing that you are writing about, whereas you're essentially screaming into a void with a lot of original work. God, there are so many bullet points. It's a lesson that's going to take me like 3 months to finish because I have so much to say on it, and I don't want to take up an hour giving this presentation. But I think it's an extremely important thing, and I will be eventually doing a writing podcast, because we're going to be doing bi-weekly writing podcasts on here after the big event is over. And I have an entire lesson for that podcast that is just about fan fiction.
This is the first podcast, so it's a little bit disorganized. By the time we get through this gigantic event and back to the regular bi-weekly stuff, I promise it'll be a lot more organized.
And I will be reading your story after the podcast, everyone.
And on this subject, generally just saying, I do want to say that this is actually a very good question for writing, because it's something that's really weird. When I was in my writing classes on like the college level, there came this certain air of certain writers would become a little bit like elitist, and they were like above fan fiction. And I'm like, but we all started there. I mean, fan fiction is a great way to get a grasp on writing without having to worry about all the technical aspects. You don't have to build the world. You don't have to start your characters from scratch. You can, if you want, you can introduce an OC, but now you're introducing an OC in a world that already exists. It takes a lot of the technical aspects out so you can focus on mastering the parts of it that interest you more. And you can still develop a plot. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to be really honest with you guys for a second. When I joined Amino about a year ago, that was actually my first time writing any sort of fan fiction. I was one of those elitist people who looked down on fan fiction writers and people who used canon characters in role plays and stuff like that. But now looking back at it, that was entirely unnecessary elitism on my part. Learning how to write and play characters that already exist is a skill unto itself. So,
Hear.
And it helps you write better characters of your own.
It does.
It really does.
Yes.
So,
Right.
I hope that answered your question, Everin. Yes, we all love fanfiction.
Yeah.
Sora had a question. Do you ever write something up and it seems to drag on, and when you go to read it again, it's the quickest thing you've ever read? Yes. Especially if it took you 500 years to write it in the first place.
500 years later, you have 100 words, and you're like, this is great.
Yep.
It feels like you are writing so much unnecessary information, and then you read through it again, and whoops.
I actually very recently had that happen to me. It's a thing that I actually haven't posted on this Amino yet because I'm still a little bit embarrassed about how long it seemed to drag on. But as I went through it again and started editing it, I realized that was it's fine. Learning to write with brevity is a skill unto itself as well. But when you're writing something down, the first draft, make it as big as you need it to, because from there you're just going to be cutting things out. So don't worry about it. Basically.
One of my favorite like famous author quotes is like, "I'm sorry this letter is so long, but I didn't have time to make it shorter." So yeah, don't worry about it.
The thing in the thing with writing something long that feels long when you're especially if it feels long when you do reread it instead of getting that like quickness. Everin, I will read it after the podcast, but I did see that you said that you posted it. Oh, that's the first thing you've ever written, though?
Oh, welcome to the crew. I'm throwing confetti at you. You just can't see it.
It's invisible confetti. I'm
very,
excited to read it.
Cool.
Well, I mean, I was already excited to read it, but Tara's got the confetti covered. Thank you, Tara.
Oh, you got me.
Something that what was I saying? If it does feel like it is dragging on for a little bit. Oh, thank you. I'm glad that Itera. I'm glad that we're helping.
I'm dying.
I'm sorry, Kari. I can't see your not bolded message.
You monster.
If it does feel like it's dragging on, I'm gonna finish this thought so that we can move on to the next. If it does feel like it's dragging on, you might be trying to tell more from your story than you originally planned. So finding something else to focus on in the interim to give it sort of a tied over piece, to give more to your piece that can that can help a lot. You might have thought that you were trying to write just this one thing, but the story itself is supposed to be about something a little bit bigger. So finding more things to do in the middle of it can really break up a long-winded thing.
And don't be afraid of breaking something into smaller pieces. Don't be afraid of having a part 1, part 2, part 3, part 8. Don't be afraid of that.
Mm-hmm. I used to write a lot of longer form stuff.
And conversely, there was one of the books that I had read where the author was originally a short story writer, so each chapter was basically like its own condensed short story that came together to tell one larger overarching story. So whatever medium fits you best, you can always kind of work with it and wiggle to get what you want.
I guess the name of the game is just wiggle with it.
Yeah, there was this book that I read for one of my classes called The Art of Writing, and literally every rule he laid down, he was like, unless this, or except for that, it's an art. There's no rules.
So Gamer asked, how did you guys get into writing, and what was the first thing that you wrote? Does anyone else want to start? I feel like I've been talking a lot.
Knives.
Yeah, that's me. Hi. All right. So, like I said, I only started writing very recently. I got into it. I've been role playing for a long time, and that's where I learned the skills for writing. I got all the tools together, but it was only, I mean, other than like school assignments and stuff, but I don't count that. It was like a year ago when I wrote, what was it? Like the shuffle draw thing.
Yes. Double Blind Destiny. It was Fia's challenge on KHA.
Yep,
it was like
that was
the first thing that we ever did on KHA.
That
Thanks,
was
Fia.
the first thing I ever wrote on my own, other than like school assignments, like I said. It's weirdly intimidating for me to write something just on my own without having a group of people around me to bounce off of in a roleplay setting, rather. So it's an interesting transition that I don't think either of you really had to go through.
I didn't roleplay until you started writing. We swapped.
Yeah, I didn't.
Got me
Actually, I didn't. Same. Van got me into role playing. I didn't even really know it was a thing until him. Oops. But I'm guessing I'm next. Am I next?
You're next.
You're next, yeah.
All right. So, geez, my first actual memory of writing was technically a school assignment, but one I took to with great fervor. We had to make a story and then like physically make a book out of like scrap paper. And tiny 9-year-old me was smitten with this concept. I don't think we were supposed to be this adoring, but apparently I had a hard time not working very hard on something even as a 9-year-old. So, I mean, it was maybe 8 pages, 15 lines. I don't even know. But honestly, that was when I was immediately hooked on writing, was through a school assignment. And then after that, it was lots of notebooks, occasionally paint because I got excited about illustrating it, things like that. When I really got serious about it, I was like 13, and it was just what I did on every free break that I had. I would just go to the library and type a bunch of writing that honestly I look back at and cringe, but mostly I started with a lot of like the same stories over and over again, trying to get my voice down. So it was a lot of practice stories, but there's no such thing as like wasted writing. I didn't really think of them as like pointless or whatever. It was something that even though I was writing the same thing over and over again, I learned from each concept. So that's kind of how I got into it, if that answers that question, I think.
And I very recently found.
Bye.
I very recently. I'm scrolled back in the chat, so I can't see what's being said currently at the moment.
Yeah, she's got to head out for now.
Oh, bye. For me, I recently found one of my earliest writings, which was when I was in first grade. That's I
Wow.
vaguely remember
That's
writing
little.
it. I vaguely remember writing it. It was I think it was the butterfly poem. I read it to you.
Oh my god, yes. I actually can remember the poetry assignments back in like elementary school. I remember that now.
So I think the first thing that I have like a memory of that particular thing was I wrote a story, a poem for school that was about being a butterfly, because we were doing the butterfly unit in first grade. But the first thing that I remember really being enamored with writing was in fifth grade. You're like 10 years old in fifth grade, right?
Something like that.
Something
Yeah.
around there. The first story that I ever remember being enamored with writing was we were doing that unit in fifth grade where you learn about like volcanoes and stuff. So we had to write something about Pompeii, like the tragedy of Pompeii, and I, like everybody else, wrote like a tiny book report or like a description of the volcano exploding, and this was the first time that I remember really becoming just completely in love with writing. Was I wrote a full like story, like it was like 12 pages on Microsoft Word of this story about I created this woman and her family and her love. Like she was like getting married, and like then the volcano exploded and everyone died. But most of the story was dedicated to most of the story was dedicated to this beautiful. I say beautiful because that's what it seemed like to me, but I don't have it anymore. So like I don't know how cringy it was, but it was probably very cringy because it was written by a 10-year-old. But like most of the story was dedicated to like you following this woman. I think that her name was Vienna. It began with a V. I was very obsessed with like pretty V names at the time. And I remember just the teacher being so like moderately concerned about me writing 12 pages, and like one of them was about the volcano even existing. We were supposed to write something about the volcano, but I wrote like a short novella. But that was from that point on. From that point on, I was very, very enamored with writing. I had notebooks upon notebooks. I was taking them everywhere with me. Especially when I got into writing Kingdom Hearts fan fiction in middle school.
And don't forget your Sailor Moon. What was it, Sailor Moon fic?
It was a Sailor Moon fan fiction. I didn't know that fan fiction existed back then, but I was writing a Sailor Moon story. I wrote a Pokemon story. I didn't realize that fan fiction existed. I thought that I was the most original person in the entire universe. But when Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix came out, I started writing Kingdom Hearts fan fiction, and I was carrying my notebooks with me everywhere. I was writing my own original story all the time. I had notebooks with me everywhere. It was concerning to people how much I did not interact with anyone ever.
Lee and I are single-handedly responsible for the destruction of all the forests in the world as I stare at this bookshelf lined with notebooks. Yes, it is all our fault.
And to answer the half question that Kyrie put in Shiki on here, acting is actually an extremely great skill for role playing and writing dialogue and writing how characters interact with each other. It's extremely useful. One of the things that I like to do with these two in particular is live role play. We'll do an RP, but we'll do it in person. We'll be acting out the characters. We'll be doing the voices of the characters, and it's extremely useful for getting into their head, actually.
I actually took several acting classes in college as well, and I can only agree a ton. But there's one question for you specifically, Lee. It was from Everin. Is music the same as writing?
You know who to ask on this one, because Lee's a big musicals nerd. Broadway.
I'm tone deaf, so I'm gonna sit this one out.
Music has a lot of similarities to the creativity of writing. I like writing music lyrics. I like writing poetry, in particular, like slam poetry. So music actually has a lot like acting. It's a lot of, especially with music theory, where you're studying emotions being invoked with music, telling a story with the way that music is structured, you actually can learn a lot about any creative medium from any other. There's a lot of translation work involved, but getting into any sort of creative pursuit can be extremely useful for becoming better at anything else.
It's similar to how if you play one sport, the skills you learn there will carry over to another one. I don't know where I was going with that, but basically, yeah, same thing. Oh, did I kill you?
Yes.
Oh, sweet.
All right. So I hope that answers your question, Everin. So Kimsey asks, do you ever feel like you don't write enough in a story and then feel like you need to write more but don't know how to expand it? Something that does happen all the time.
All the time.
Something that I like to do is try and describe the scene, try and put more thoughts into the character's head, or try and expand beyond what's been said. But sometimes the easiest way to do it is to make it shorter. If you feel like what you're trying to say doesn't have enough substance, write something smaller. It's not a sin to write a 2-paragraph story.
I hope not, because I've written a lot of those.
Yes. So if
to write fortune cookies, we've all sinned. You're welcome.
We've all sinned. All 3 of us did the fortune cookie challenge.
I myself am a huge fan of drabbles, so feeling like something needs to be longer. If you're just putting things in there to make it bigger and more impressive, then it's fluff without real content most of the time. So I wouldn't worry too much about it, unless you're trying to find more content for it. Is that what's
The thing in particular about writing for Amino that I like is that a blog can be 3 sentences and still look like a blog. It can still look like something cohesive, even if it is 1 paragraph and a picture. That's what's nice about writing on Amino in particular, especially if you have trouble with writing longer form stuff. A lot of the issues that I had when I started writing on Amino as opposed to other websites is that I felt like I wasn't writing enough because I was used to writing books, and when I transferred to Amino, I had to start working on writing smaller, because it just doesn't transfer as well here. So you would end up with a story that would look like basically nothing on paper, but takes like 20 minutes to read in blog form.
So much scrolling.
So much scrolling. So that's why I've become more attached to things like one-shots and drabbles.
And if ever you feel the need to expand on your writing and make it longer, kind of to Van's point, to Guile's point, which one do you go by here?
Both.
Both.
I also go by Knife Noodle.
And occasionally knives. Cutlery. Anyway, Stabby boy. But much kind of to your point, if you're trying to expand on your writing and make it longer, the best thing to do would probably be to ask yourself why. What is it you feel the need to expand on? Is it that you feel that your imagery needs a little work? It's hard to tell the setting from the way it's written now. You feel like you need to get more into the character's head. That will tell you what you're trying to add and the content you're trying to add. I mean, I've had times before where I'm looking at a scene and saying, I feel like the setting's not strong enough, and then I'll just go to a separate document, list the 5 senses, and describe in that character's voice everything in the room under those 5 sentences, like 5 senses, everything that they perceive, and use those things in context of the original piece to kind of establish the setting a little more. But I had an objective in mind, so it was easier for me to know what I was trying to expand.
The why is an extremely important thing, because if you only feel like it needs to be longer because you're typing it in like a Word document, but it's going to end up on Amino, try switching where it's being placed, right? And then move it into an Amino draft and see if it still looks like it's not enough. Read it out loud and see if it sounds incomplete. Because your issue could just be that you're looking at it from the wrong angle.
Also, if you look at softcover books, or hardcover books, I guess, you'll notice that the width of a page is a lot less than the width of a printed page. So if you make the space that you're typing in a little bit more constricted, that'll also give you a better idea of how long it is.
Mm-hmm. So hopefully that answers your question.
As we ramble on forever.
All right. So, Itara, how do you stop belittling yourself when you write? Oh, God, this is such a good question.
I know, it's like I'll let you know when I find out.
This is something that's plagued Lee and Nate for as long as I've known both of them.
It happened to you as well, but something that you realized is that when you come back to it later, you end up liking it a lot more in many cases.
Yep.
This is very true.
So that's a good thing to start.
The difference between how I do and how you guys do is that if I feel like I'm belittling myself, I'll then get mad at myself for being belittled, so that works for me. Does not work for everyone.
Oh my God, you're a little rage machine. I love it.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
But if you want to talk about your time lapse thing, then I think that's a good place to start.
I remember when Nate was writing in like middle school, what she would do is type up some paragraphs, look at it, have me look at it, and then just delete the whole thing. And I think I yelled that habit out of you.
Yeah, it was actually a really effective method. Just yell it out of me.
So if you have a friend who can yell at you for it, that may or may not work for you.
Side effects.
I wouldn't suggest it.
If you have depression, it may not work.
It may not? Probably
don't
not.
Don't yell at me. Please don't bully me.
Please no bully.
Please no bully. Something that's helpful for me is and Everin, I did see your question. The thing that I've found helpful is if I find one piece of it that I can look at and say, I like this. I like the way it sounds. I can latch on to that and look at things in context of that. So in almost every one of my stories that I've written, I have a line that I love. And it's finding that one thing that you can say, I like this. This is good. You don't have to like the whole thing to accept it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really helpful, because then once I've calmed down, because I do have depression, once I've calmed down from it, from that initial being worked up over I hate everything that I ever do ever, then I have this one thing that I know that I like about it. I have this one sentence, I have this one word choice that I know that I like about it. And then when I come back, when I've calmed down a little bit, the time thing does work. Then I can look at it in the context of, yes, I still do like that line. This one's also pretty good.
And once you start looking at it that way, honestly, it gets easier to work with it. What I've usually referred to that as is when I'm creating, I wear my writing hat. And when I'm editing, I wear my editing hat. And it takes time for me to change those hats out. Because if I try to do one, then the other, I get in that box of delete everything. And it's not productive. It doesn't work. Versus if you come back to it, as soon as you're saying, I like this line and this line, but this line needs to be improved, suddenly you're already into the groove of improving it, and you're in that rhythm of writing again, and it's not nearly as destructive as going at it when you already hate it.
And go ahead.
Are you sure?
Go ahead.
All right. When I was younger, and a little bit now, but mostly when I was younger, I take a long time writing things because I edit as I go. It's a really hard habit to have because you will write the same sentence 50 times with a word different every time. And it's a lot easier to just keep going forward, not look back until you're done. On the editing topic, I mean.
All that said, everyone has their own method too, so.
Oh, yeah. George Orwell, I think what he would do is he would edit every single page to completion as he went. So there was no editing process. There was no going back and fixing things after it's all written out. He would go page by page, and once he got to the last page, the book was done. I can't imagine doing that.
Oh, but Everin, we have a question. You asked one. Do you want us to answer it before you go?
All right, we can answer your question when you come back. I'll make a note of it on my computer right here.
Oh,
Hero.
while you're making a note on that, make sure that the recording is going well.
Yes, it is.
Make sure
it
it's
is
still
still
going.
working. I have it right in front. I have it right in front of me on the screen. So.
Okay, good.
Hero.
Please eat. Eating is
Please
good
eat.
for you.
You guys never tell me that. Never, ever.
Well, you don't need to be told that.
That's because you're a big boy.
All right, see
Bye,
you too,
Sora.
Sora.
Bye.
Kim understands me.
Give me a second. I am speaking of making food. I'm gonna make some tea. So, one sec.
So, if anyone has any other questions, then we're currently most of the way caught up. I'm going to the post because I know that Yami had a couple of questions.
Boop, boop, boop. All right. So this chat, to answer Cloud, this chat is just writing questions with the three of us. I mean, right now, Guile is going to make tea, and Lee is checking the post for more questions, but the three of us are in the creative writing field in various forms and capacities. So this is basically just a writing chat, Q&A kind of thing.
We're also testing out the podcast system to make sure everything works for the upcoming April stuff.
You're not supposed to let them know that they're test subjects.
You're all test subjects.
So then you can still hear, though, yes?
I can hear you, yeah. I just try to stay muted so that you don't hear like the buzzing in the background.
All right. So Yemi asked, when writing a reply in roleplay, how do you make sure that you can create a good one without repeating words and making sure that the sentence flows properly?
Oh, that is a good question. It's a tough one. It's a good one.
So repeating words, I usually will go to I learned from Van to utilize thesaurus.com. Just throw a word that you've used a bunch in there, look at different ways that you can say it, and restructure your sentence if necessary.
But to give you a warning about thesaurus.com, don't just throw random words in there willy-nilly. look for a word that feels more fitting than the one that you started with. Oh, I didn't hold my phone the right way. Did any of you hear that?
Yeah.
We heard
All
it.
right, cool.
Yeah.
So use thesaurus.com as a tool to get to the word that you mean to use, not to just find an alternative way to say the same thing. There's no such thing as an exact synonym. There's no word that means the exact same thing as any other word. There's different connotations to every single word in the English language. So just be wary of that.
If you're using thesaurus.com too liberally, you're going to wind up sounding like Vexen.
Yeah, be careful of it's called thesaurus syndrome. It's when you are attempting to subvert the whole. Don't use words like more or good that teachers try and drill into you to teach you about word choice, but then they don't actually teach you about word choice, and then you end up with thesaurus vomit, where you're just sort of regurgitating words that don't have the connotation that you mean, because you're avoiding trying to use, bad words, quote, quote, like good and happy. Sometimes those are the right words when you're writing certain characters. For example, Sora from Kingdom Hearts would use words like happy or something to that end. He wouldn't use words like elated. And if you use the word elated when you're writing about Sora, then you're most likely, if you're trying to get into his voice, not writing him properly. Character voice is really important when you're working with word choice.
Yeah. And another thing that I've found too is that a lot of people take writing rules way too much to heart. And in that case of don't use good. And another one I've heard is like don't use adjectives. And I literally had someone in a workshop who would highlight every adjective you had and just cross it out. And you're like, sometimes I need that. If you say something like this character spoke loudly, then you should be saying they yelled or shouted or exclaimed, holler. There's so many verbs that have that connotation.
Those are adverbs.
I can speak. Words do what I do. As I was saying, adjective, that's not right. But yeah. Adverb.
The idea that you have to avoid using the word said it's a really common idea, but it's an unnecessary one. Sometimes people just say things. You don't have to have everything yelled and screamed and bellowed. You can just say.
Something that's really important when it comes to writing rules and writing lessons is that you're taught the rules so that you can break them when you become a better writer. When you get to the point where you you need to understand why the rules exist so that you can understand when they need to be bent or broken, for word choice in particular. So you will be taught, never use this word. That's not true. There are times and places to use that word. Yes, that's the post.
Yeah.
There are times and places to use those smaller words. There are character voices in which you would use those words. There are genres of writing, like young adult fiction, in which it would make no sense to use the word acquiesce.
Are you making fun of Cat right now?
I'm making fun of Cat. And yes, Atara, in dialogue, you have to be paying very close attention to how your character would speak. If you were writing as Vexen or even like King Bradley or someone like that, then they would be using different language than Nina or Sora or even Cloud. Different characters will speak in different ways. Different characters have different speech quirks. Like you'll see a lot in Japanese media that characters will have like sentence enders, or in Kingdom Hearts 1, what is it that Riku says all the time? Suppose. Riku in Kingdom Hearts 1 in the English version says the word suppose constantly. That's something that you would need to keep in mind.
What the rule that I go with is if it's inside quotation marks, all of the rules don't mean anything. You can have bad grammar, you can have repeated words, you can have whatever your character needs. I mean, go low on like the verbal tics, the uhs, the ums. But however your character would speak, that's how you're going to write it down. I actually I got into a disagreement with an English teacher of mine because I had a character in one of my assignments that spoke with incorrect grammar, and every time I used incorrect grammar in the story, she would mark me down for it. And that's the story of how I ended up failing that class. But try not to fail your classes.
Van dying on principle.
I'm bad at that.
It's
very good at
dying
it,
for
honestly.
a cause. That's martyring.
Martyring over grammar. But I mean, I agree. I mean, honestly, dialogue, it almost baffles me that an English teacher did that to this day, because I'm like, that was Mark Twain. Mark Twain, you would have failed him out of your course because that's what he did. That's his style. Okay, so like it's definitely something to keep in mind, that the character voice is more important than regular rules of writing. And the only time that something like these rules of writing apply is when you do have a combination of words that's not doing the right thing. Like if you use a lot to try to get across that a character is nervous, add some dimension to it. Take out some of the ums, give them like a fidgeting quirk kind of thing after the fact. Something like if a character does speak loudly, you can say they raise their voice instead. Things like that. There are lots of different ways to say something that might have more impact. That's when you're actually doing something for a reason, not just because it's against the rules.
And have faith in your readers. If your character speaks, and if your character has some sort of speech quirk or some sort of physical action, you don't need to write it every time. You need to establish it at the beginning that is what is happening. Have faith in your readers that they're going to remember that that's happening, because you will frustrate them to no end if you keep reminding them. Remind them every once in a while that this thing is happening. Have, like, if your character, one of my characters, when she's nervous, she tugs on her hair. So every now and again, if she's going through a scene in which she is nervous, I will establish it at the beginning that is what she is doing, and I will very occasionally remind the reader that, yes, she is still playing with her hair. She is still nervous. And I can also show that with her dialogue, with her other actions, without having to constantly call attention to the thing that would be really annoying if someone was constantly calling you out on. Like, yes. I feel like everybody's encountered that one person in their life that they're trying to have a conversation, and every time you say like, or like, they try and like call you out on it. Or that person that you're in a chat room and they constantly try and correct what version of your or their you're saying.
That person is me. Don't be friends with me.
Don't be friends with Van.
I was actually in one of my courses in college was the English language course, and the intro post to that course was to explain what you thought the point of language was. And one of the students there said the point of language is to be intelligent, and our friendship died on the spot. Because the point of language is communication, so go for that. Focus on that. It's not that your character has to use fancy words and seem a certain way. Just be true to their character, and do have faith in your audience. They will understand.
Having faith in your readers will, if it backfires, you can rewrite it.
Yeah.
You will never get their trust again if you treat them like they're idiots.
And that can come from a place of low self-esteem, too. You can be looking at it and say, this doesn't make any sense, I need to clarify this, and then you clarify it obsessively, inadvertently making the audience feel like they're stupid, or that you think they're stupid.
So I think that's a really important point as well.
Grandparents.
So
For the conversation going on in the chat, my thing was pretty okay. I said it all the time, and it made people upset.
I had I go through phases with verbal quirks.
I had the hardest time in my life saying the letter T if it was in the middle of a word. Curtain, button. That was a problem. That's all I got.
Button.
Button.
It was really hard, okay?
No, I can't fault you for it. I physically could not say the letter R until I was about 15 years old. So, yeah, I can't look down on anyone.
What was it? There was something, there was another question. Yes, it was everyone's question about editing, getting help from Lee with editing.
I am extremely busy over the next month or two, but I do help when I can. I'm better at being able to help with smaller things because I like giving detailed feedback that explains my point in helping with editing and things is to help you understand why the thing is being corrected. Like throwing Nate under the bus again. When I was editing her thing the other day, I made sure that when yes, Tara, I will write down your question and just give us a little shout when you come back in.
Bye.
When I was pointing out things that I personally would change, I made sure that I explained why I thought that would make more sense.
And alternatively, I didn't have to take them if I don't like them. I mean, it's my piece. I don't mean anything offensively to Lee. If I go, I don't like that suggestion, and I just skip it. That's my choice, my taste. I am perfectly allowed to say I don't want that feedback, but I still deeply appreciated getting it. Even if I didn't take it, it still meant a lot just to have it.
And since examples are always easier to work with, I pulled up my notes real quick. Something that was established in your piece was that something that was established a little later in your piece was that this was a location that was very, very familiar to her, but that wasn't established early on in the piece. So I pointed out that I personally would add more clarification up at the front about it feeling like home or something like that. Yeah, just so that the reader has more of an in ahead of time that the character is aware of this place, that this character knows this place very well, that it is a comfortable place for her, and that her anxieties are because of what is going on in the scene, not where she is.
She's a monster.
Sometimes. But just using that as an example. But I do help where I can, and I will be looking over your piece.
Another thing I want to mention editing wise in general is that while it's always good to get feedback from other people, you want to refrain from relying on it too much to the point where you have no confidence in yourself as a writer. Edit your piece yourself, have faith in your skills, try your hardest first, because if you find yourself counting on other people for editing, you're only going to hurt your faith in yourself as a writer if you feel like you can't do it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So that's something that I've seen a lot of young writers fall into, that kind of bunny ears like trap, if you will, is they seek out help from others, and then when that person inevitably gets sick or has to go to a family gathering or something like that, and they can't edit it for months on end, that writer puts themselves in a position of being like, well, I can't do this myself, and that's not fair to you. That's not fair to you as a writer, because you can. I mean, it wasn't necessarily directed at you personally, Everin. It was a general statement for everyone's benefit.
And getting someone to help you with editing is a great way of learning how to do it for yourself. That's the reason that teachers should be willing to look over things that you've done, because they're the ones who are meant to show you how to do things for yourself. That's the point of teachers.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really important. And if you can find a teacher that is willing to give you the kind of feedback that you need to show you how to be better for yourself, then that's extremely helpful.
Teachers who can teach you how to do something for yourself instead of doing it for you are absolutely invaluable. So if you have a teacher that can give you that skill, that is interested in teaching their students in that way, don't be afraid to ask them, like, if you write outside of their lessons, don't be afraid to ask them if they'd be willing to look it over to teach you, like, how to edit in that aspect as well. They might say no because, wow, teachers are really, really, really busy. But there's no harm in trying.
But I will be looking over your piece, and hopefully I'll be able to give you some general direction for writing in the future.
Oh no, my phone's dying.
It's never any shame in asking for help. No. Mm-hmm. If you can find a workshop group anywhere online, that's even better, because you're kind of doing like an equivalent exchange sort of thing where they edit your stuff, you edit their stuff, and you have someone now who's familiar with your work, who knows like the words that you repeat most or the characters you've written recently. Like in the case of Lee telling me like, oh, that word sounds more like this character that you were writing, less like the one you're currently writing, because Lee has experience with my writing voice. So if you have a group like that, it's even better because they have the added benefit of knowing your style more, and it's more balanced. You don't feel like you're relying on that person because they also rely on you. It gets rid of that pitfall.
Like the three of us bounce stories off each other all the time because we are a writing group, so to speak. And it helps us become better writers because we're able to understand where everyone is coming from because we know each other very well.
Yeah.
And I will be right back. I gotta find a cord.
There are two in the room upstairs. Two of the fast ones. So, let's see. Do you have any other questions, or are we just waiting on Atara's?
I think it's Atara's.
Oh, I do have one more question from Yemi.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that's right.
How do you tell the difference between words like fiancé and fiancé? So with those words in particular, it's usually the masculine and feminine versions because French is stupid. I have to say it when Guile is muted or he'll scream. But I've noticed that it's usually a French-based word that has a masculine and feminine version, but it doesn't matter as much when you're writing in English. They've been bastardized to the point where it doesn't really make that much of a difference. I tend to prefer the feminine version of the word blonde with the E at the end over blonde without the E because I think it looks nicer, and no one's going to call you on it, really. If anyone calls you on it, then they need more. Then that means that is literally the only thing wrong with your piece, and they can't think of anything else to belittle you with, and that's good news, in my opinion. If they can't think of anything else to bully you with, then you wrote a good piece.
Just, you got to give yourself credit. You are more creative than them. They can't think of anything to make fun of you about.
Yeah. Does she need water? I hope she's okay. Don't choke. Choking is bad for you. I don't recommend it. But I think along that same vein, I lost my train of thought. Got distracted.
Good call, Kim. Good call, Kim. It's good. Let me see.
But along that same vein, generally with words like that, it's just a masculine and feminine versions. If you care desperately about it, you can just Google it, and it'll tell you whether it's the masculine or feminine version, and you can go from there. Usually it's German or French words, in my experience. But because of where they are in popular culture, it doesn't make too much of a difference in writing in English. If anyone calls you on it, then you wrote a good thing, because it's the only thing that they can think of to try and annoy you with.
That's actually a pretty accurate summary. And I mean, as a general heads up, whenever you post something publicly, if someone posts criticism on your piece, the thing to remember that helped me get through a lot of my workshops is take the feeling out of the situation. Just look at the piece, look at their comment, and if they have a valid point, take the point. If they don't, disregard it. If someone is mean or aggressive or kind of bullying you, ignore it. Look for the point. Your goal here is to improve your writing. If they don't have a point, then you can just ignore them. If they do, then you take... Sorry?
No, go ahead.
If they do, you just take that feedback and you improve your piece, and then you're done. That's it.
All right, I am back.
And one thing to remember when you are offering feedback, when you are giving feedback on somebody else's work, is ask if they're okay with criticism. Ask if they're okay with feedback first, and do the feedback sandwich of thing they did well, thing that can be improved, and thing that was improved from last time, or just another compliment, or something to the end of I really did like this, or something to that end. If you can't think of anything positive to say, then you likely shouldn't say anything. You can offer constructive feedback on a piece that you do not like. But if you cannot think of anything positive to say, then you probably shouldn't say anything.
And honestly, in my 4 years of getting the bachelor's in creative writing, 3 years of those courses were in workshop-based classes, and I have never been unable to think of something nice to say. So that would be truly impressive feat to me if you can't. That's intense.
I have a brownie in my face, I'm trying not to talk.
Oh, so you're saying I should get a brownie?
So you're saying I should get a brownie?
There aren't any more brownies. I ate the last brownie.
Ooh, I have a whole tray of brownies. I'll be right over.
Why?
Welcome back.
Yes.
So
were we just talking about like taking overly harsh feedback, or?
We kind of evolved into that. Yeah, that's not what the question was, but.
All right, good.
So Kyrie asked, what do you do to inspire or motivate yourself to write, just in general? Continuing a story after you've lost interest, or do you drop the piece at that point? So I'm going to break that into two separate questions of what do you do to inspire or motivate yourself to write in general, and then we'll talk about like picking up pieces that you've left behind. So starting with the motivation. Van, you haven't talked for a while because you were making tea, so you go first.
All right. So if you have a piece that, I guess I'm going to just jump straight into the second one then. Okay. if you have a piece that you were working on but lost interest in, try to figure out what it is that made you lose interest in it. Is it just did the concept get stale to you, or did you decide that the path you weren't working on, the path that you were going on, rather, isn't going to work, and you don't feel like hammering out the kinks from it? Figure out what the issue is. For example, if the concept gets stale, try to introduce something new into it that brings it more life, something that gets your attention. Whether that's introducing another character, or taking a character out, or introducing a plot line that you didn't think would fit there. Just something to change the course and basically freshen it up. That's how I'd go back to it.
And
As I
overall
throw my word
motivation.
salad at you.
And overall motivation for like what do you do to just inspire yourself overall?
All right. So I don't know about you guys, but sometimes there's just an image in my head that I need to get out one way or another. So once you make that thing that you've got, that idea, into a reality, you're free from it. So just write it.
Something that I've also seen you do, and I've tried to do, but I'm not particularly good at other things, is I've seen you get stuck on writing or get writer's block, and then you'll try and switch to a different creative medium. You'll like make something out of wire, or you'll draw something, and from there you'll be able to get yourself creatively motivated overall, and then you'll start being able to write from there.
That is also true.
Absolutely.
It's just an extension of the idea of getting this thought, this concept out in some way. So if you can get one idea out, if you can get one creative project accomplished, then you can just use that momentum to go back to the other thing you're working on.
Something that so I'll go next if you're all set.
Yeah.
So overall motivation and inspiration, as I stated, I have depression. So motivation is something that I am intimately familiar with not having. Something that I've used a lot, and I've recommended this to other people as well, is when set up a playlist of the most different music that you can think of, like from Screamo to All Star by Smash Mouth to silly Broadway music to the Barney I Love You song. Like jump in the middle of a song to one that's completely different over and over and over again until something strikes you. I consider it like creatively jump-starting your brain by making you think in a bunch of different ways in a short succession. Which has been
funny because I do the same thing, even though I'm not as musically inclined. I do the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm. What I find most helpful is not letting yourself finish the thought, quote unquote. So don't let it go to the end of the song, get about 30 seconds to a minute in, and then just cut it into the next song. But
just kind of shake you out of whatever mindset you're in to the other one.
Right. So in terms of continuing something after you've lost interest or put it down for a long time, this is an issue that I have a lot. I agree with Guile in finding out why you dropped it in the first place. For me, something that for my New Year's resolution was to finish a story that I had started months before. It ended up
Nate,
being,
are you making more food?
I made tea. You did this. It's your fault.
Anyways, you were saying, Lee.
I ended up making it my New Year's resolution to finish this story, and I ended up doing it. But what I did was, instead of, because I was writing it straight out, I started with my concept, and I was just going forward from there. But it got to that section of the story where you have to describe a lot of small things. So what I did was I jumped ahead like a short period of time in the story, and I started writing a couple of like random sentences that I felt like would fit in later in the story. And from there I was able to get myself writing in that world again. And then I was able to go back and restart where I had left off. Leaving off in the middle of a paragraph, start the paragraph over, save the old one, and start the paragraph over. Even if you have to backspace into the last couple of words of the paragraph before it and just type them exactly as is again, do it. Start your paragraph over and get yourself back into that world. That's what I usually do. I do have a lot of things that I have not finished, but I want to. I just don't have time. And that's my biggest issue with that in particular.
That's your curse.
So, now, I answer this now, right? Did I do it?
Yeah, now it's your turn.
Yes.
Okay. So, as previously stated, I have ADHD. So having to finish things is indeed a problem I have regularly. And what usually works for me is trying to hit on that variability. It's probably why I like the music thing, where I just shift tone for a bit, and then I can get back into what I was originally focusing on. So that does help me a lot. Honestly, if you just step away, do something completely unrelated, and come back, that usually works for me to kind of get that motivation back. Sometimes it's not always that easy, though. Like, I'm doing a choose-your-own story, and if the readers choose something that I don't like, but it wins by popular vote, well, I signed up for that, so I have to write it. Granted, they're not in full control. I control the rest. It's kind of like being a DM. So they make the suggestion, and then I decide what the world does in response. So that does assist to some extent in that particular medium when I'm trying to get past that hurdle. If there's something I'm not interested in that situation, I would look for a way to add something that does intrigue me, that does get my attention, to flesh out that scene a little bit more. Kind of similar to what Guile was saying, of just, if you don't like a scene, if something's not interesting you, why? What is it missing? How can you get it to be something you're interested in? Because the way writing is, if you write something and you aren't interested, it's going to be obvious, completely obvious, that your heart's not in it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, that definitely sucks. But as far as how to get yourself motivated or inspired when you just aren't, I have a couple prompt books that I use. I use a lot of those Tumblr prompt things. Prompts help me a lot because it's just, I stop dwelling on my disinterest and I have something else for my mind to chew on, so to speak. If the concept is intriguing enough, I'll stop wallowing in my motivationless despair and move on to actually focusing on the prompt that I am doing. And occasionally, that entails something a little more advanced than just like a blog. Sometimes I'll watch a movie or play a game, and something in that game or movie will strike me as a concept that's interesting, and I will put a character, either canon or original, in that position and just write out their response to it. Kind of just shaking things loose rather than trying to start the official project. If I have a project or a goal in mind and I can't get my motivation for that, I'll try something smaller and work my way up to it. So that usually helps as well, the Drabble kind of thing.
I love the snapshot prompts because they give you something quick and easy to chew on.
Yeah. And then you've kind of warmed yourself up, so you're ready for something bigger.
Finishing something is so motivating, even if that thing that you finished is 1 to 3 sentences. You finished it. You have
Yeah.
XYZ amount of things that you have finished in comparison to this thing that you have not.
Just going through that motion. It's
So-
huge.
So I think that answers that question. Does that answer your question, Kyrie? I know that a lot of it was just do it, but it's also really important to figure out why you stopped. And if you do have to scrap it, just save it somewhere, because a you of the future might be more interested in it. A you of the future might have a new take on it. You might be coming at it with a completely different life perspective and be able to write it better than you ever could have at the time that you initially thought of it.
Yeah, never ever get rid of anything. Even if you don't finish it, even if you know you're never going to go back and finish it, just put it somewhere. Look at it later, maybe.
This was what was yelled into me. Whoa, didn't mean to hit that button. This was what was yelled at me repeatedly over years of don't throw out any of your writing. And I'm really glad that Van did yell that at me, because I would have lost a lot more writing if he hadn't.
So, Everin asked if you have a friend who likes fan fictions and their birthday is in a couple of weeks, do you think it's a good idea to write them a fanfic for their birthday of their favorite ship? That sounds adorable and precious and so sweet. I've written fanfic
I second that.
people. For me and Guile's first anniversary, I wrote him a giant Lienzo fanfiction. I wrote him a giant fanfiction of his OTP.
It was
really gay.
It was great.
Was it great or very gay or both? It's hard to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was called 8 Memories, 6 Reasons. And for Krinsler's birthday, I wrote him a Lexius piece. Stalwart Guardian. So I think that writing is a really sweet gift, because it's very, very personal. I am not an artist. I only have my words. So to me, it's the same thing as making something homemade for someone. It's a really sweet gesture of you putting your own heart and soul into something for someone, and I think that that's very, very sweet.
Agreed. And when you have a friend, particularly like a lot of my friends are online and in other countries and things like that, the only thing I can give them is a digital piece. So it's a great way to still have it be like a heartfelt, personal gift without having to like pay $400 in shipping. Hashtag priorities.
That and your alternative would be to ship cookies to them, so.
Yeah.
Is Atara back yet?
I don't think so. I haven't seen Atara.
Krinsler, you haven't asked any questions.
Everyone gets me.
You calling him out?
Yeah.
I'm calling him. You could be one. Believe in your dreams.
This is the part where you're like, I have to go to the bathroom for 4 hours. Bye. Well, without prompts, I mean, I can certainly think of something to say. I'm good at talking.
Yaoi. Everyone's talking about Yaoi now.
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, since it makes Kim feel really awkward, I mean, maybe we don't go too much into it. I mean, I would assume in that case that here's a random semi-related thing of when I've been like scrolling through art, if you surprise me with like NSFW art, I'll like freak out and literally verbally out loud be like, I'm so sorry, excuse me, I didn't know you were that, like. So I can understand like if you're looking at something that
Mayu came back at her call.
We summoned her. if I go in knowing it's a yaoi, I'm okay. But if you surprise me, not ready, not okay with it.
I love my gay ships.
That's what Hardy comes back to.
I love just ships. It's fine. I love shipping. Don't judge me.
I very much enjoy shipping.
I
are-
only recently have gotten involved in it at all. Before that, I actually was powerfully anti-ship. Well, not like you're not allowed to ship it type shit, but I didn't write any of it even in role-playing. So, I'm new.
I ruined you.
I'm a baby writer.
I made you ship Akuzeku in RRP.
It was mostly the reason I didn't write a lot of shipping, and I usually don't talk about it a lot, is honestly because sometimes the community is a little cray-cray, and I have more than enough cray-cray already.
Yeah, the NSFW stuff. I can see not wanting to get involved in that.
Yeah,
Especially
I have,
considering the audience and the ages of the characters involved. I can see it.
I have very particular standards when it comes to anything 18 plus when it comes to shipping related things. I'm very picky because everything else makes me queasy.
Pretty much.
So I'm very picky, which usually leads to me avoiding it altogether. Shipping is great. The NSFW stuff is a little bit a lot of the time.
Yeah, I'm a little too picky to be like, yeah, I love that. So I'm with you on that one.
Shipping's great though.
Yeah, shipping is fun. I love all the different looks at things. And I guess on the notes of shipping, it's just like a lot of people treat it like a pass-fail system where like, this is the only ship ever. It's canon. And I'm like, okay, but the fun of fan fiction is to look at things that didn't happen in canon. So let's look at ships that didn't happen in canon. It'll be fun. Please don't kill us all.
I ship such random crack ships.
Crack ships are fun. Not even gonna lie. Like half the time I just look up a crack ship and be like, convince me.
That's always a fun game to play.
It's always a little awkward when you back off and you're like, you've convinced me. I guess I'm trash for this now.
I'm just going to guess that it's Mayu because we can't listen to voice notes while we're in the
Rip.
Rip. But we got our broadcast through finally.
Oh boy.
Gezi scheduled some broadcasts like a good boy before he left because he didn't realize.
But no, I actually can't open the I can't play the voice note, so Mayu? Mayu?
How about I say Mayu and you say Mayu?
And one of us will
I
be
say
right.
mayo, and we'll just all be wrong.
Mayonnaise.
You say Miyu.
Mew.
Mew. You say Mew. Mew mew.
Oh my god, I said mew mew, my cat comes over like, yes.
Your cat knows what's up.
She even meowed, like came over at me and was like, meow. What you want?
She wants to play along.
Mayo rays.
There we go. That was a cat
noises.
sound.
Here she is. She says hello, everyone.
Not to be confused with cat noises. It is cat.
I think there's a certain art when it comes to writing ships and romance and all that, and I just don't have that yet. So, still working on it.
Something that is really important to me in particular is chemistry between characters. And a lot of writers are young and inexperienced with romance in general, in real life or otherwise. So chemistry is something that's really hard to write. Overall, it's a really hard thing to write.
Mhm.
But but chemistry is really important to me. That's the reason that I end up shipping 90% of my ships, is that they have chemistry that I didn't expect. And the reason that I have so many no TPs is because I just don't have... they don't have the chemistry. Yes, questions are open. They can be weird. We're weird.
We're weird people.
True fact. I mean, we'll all answer. We'll be like, yes.
Meow, meow, meow,
I don't know if I can.
meow.
Do it super manly. Mew.
Ooh. Meow.
I love it. Meow.
That's amazing.
And then Hardy's like, of course. Of course. That was magic.
That was your manliest meow. That's
Do your manliest
that's
meow. Can you do
the
your
manliest
manly?
meow.
Your most meowskillin?
Meowskillin.
Oh, God. You've been ruined.
Toxic meowskillin.
It's all right. Apparently, I'm the only real man, so it's fine, I guess.
God.
Okay, that was probably a bad story to reference since we had to explain it. Never mind.
Meowskillinity.
Meowskillinity.
Yes, you can.
I am a
you can
professional
do that.
cat boy after all.
He's a professional cat boy. That is actually not a lie.
It's not.
So, Kyrie asked, how can you tell when two or more characters have a chemistry between them? In my opinion, when it comes to established characters, it's a lot easier, because if you need to change the way that a character is in order for them to successfully interact with another, then they don't have chemistry, and it feels very forced. Does it go on the wall? And one ship that is extremely popular but makes me very sad is Zemix, Zexion and Demix, which is extremely, extremely popular, and I get the appeal of opposites attract, but I have never read one where they didn't have to change fundamental aspects of Zexion's character to make it work in any way. So that's one of my biggest barriers when it comes to chemistry, is the aspects of the character. The aspects of the two or more characters need to work together. And that's what makes, they need to complement each other. Their parts of their flaws and parts of their strengths should be filling in for one another. Like, the reason I ship Lee and Enzo so much is Lee is a very exuberant personality. He's very friendly. He's very in my personal headcanon of him in a romantic setting. He's very affectionate. Enzo doesn't. He is a lot more passive than Zexion was, but he also is able to playfully jab back without riling Lee up further. So I find that gives them a lot of really good chemistry, because they work together without having to change any part of who they are.
And an important distinction to make on two counts when it comes to like chemistry and things like that. If you're writing a ship that you don't support, something that's, is like there are relationships that people get into that aren't good in real life. So it's possible to have a character with another character, like Lee, one of your pieces with Reno and Ventus.
I wrote an analysis on Kingdom Hearts Amino about why I love the ship of Reno and Ventus, because they would not be good for each other in the long term.
So you can have a relationship that doesn't necessarily have chemistry, and it's not like bad or wrong to write it. You can still write it, but write it being true to those characters. Alternatively, knowing that you can develop a character is different than changing a character. So if you have a character that's got like a revenge arc that occupies their attention so they can't have a romantic relationship, if you write about after the conclusion of the revenge arc and assuming they didn't die in their vengeance campaign, you could develop that character to the point where they will be able to have a relationship while still being true to them. There's developing and there's breaking. There's two different things there.
Right, which is a delicate balance and difficult to get into when you are a newer writer. It's something that comes with experience.
Yeah, and sometimes it's harder to get experience than not. I mean, like, one of the issues that I've encountered is the way that I experienced romance is different than pretty much every other human on the planet. So I've always had a harder time writing ships, although I like reading and looking at fan art. I've always had a harder time writing romance because I perceive it differently than most people. So the way that I write it doesn't usually hit a common thread with a lot of people.
Right, and you can have a preference for ships that make more sense to you. I have preferences for ships that make more sense to me.
Obviously. And it's not like, what a lot of people do is that if you have a ship that one person likes and the other person doesn't, well, now you have to kill each other at dawn. Like, that's not necessary.
Yeah, just have a standoff, no big.
Yeah, it's fine.
The Night of the Loving Typid.
That's it. I'm gonna have to. I just need that. I need a book that says it right on the cover. The Night of the Loving Typid.
So Everin asks, does that answer the chemistry question, or did other people have things to add?
I have something to add to the chemistry question, actually.
Yes.
It actually relates to the thing you brought up about what was it, Reno and Ventus? That a lot of popular ships have really interesting chemistry, but in a destructive way. That's still good chemistry. That's still it still makes for an interesting story. For example, in Kingdom Hearts, what was the popular one? Rico and Ansem was a hugely popular, awful ship. But it's so interesting to get into the mindset of the two characters that it's still good shippy stuff, but awful at the same time. You know what I mean?
You can have good chemistry and a bad relationship. You can have good chemistry and a horribly toxic relationship. Chemistry doesn't even have to be romantic chemistry. You can have two characters that work extremely well together. Two characters in a buddy cop movie have good chemistry.
Yeah. That's another good point.
Thank you for saying what I'm trying to say, but better.
Yeah. I mean, one of the OC groups that we have, literally one of them, that was Vianatus. One of the characters that spends a lot of time with the romantic couple is their friend. They have good chemistry, but it's not romantic chemistry.
The three of them have a really good dynamic. They have a lot of chemistry together as a trio, and even though two of the characters are romantically involved and there's nothing romantic between those two characters and that third character, that doesn't make them bad in terms of chemistry.
Cloud and Hojo, I've never actually seen that one before.
I've never seen that. I don't want to, actually. Thank you.
You know, Vincent and Hojo would be a kind of interesting one, though.
Oh, that would be so sad.
I would be like, my rule is just don't touch Hojo. You have no idea where that's been.
Oh no, you don't want to know where Hojo's been.
I mean, I'm impressed that someone was like, you know what? I'm gonna write this. Like, props to them.
You know what? I want to have like a challenge someday where by just roll of a die, what ship do you write? And it's 100% of the time going to end up like Cloud and Hojo. I guarantee it.
Oh my god, it's just rigged. It's always Cloud and Hojo.
Are we all set on the chemistry question? It's a really, really good question.
It is.
And chemistry is going to read a little bit different for different people, also because younger people will have will have different standards for chemistry and different standards for what they find romantic in a story than somebody who has a lot more life experience. Stories that I used to absolutely love when I was 14 years old, I've recently reread and cried because why did I think this was a good idea?
I mean, which is totally fine. It's totally fine.
And that's totally fine. Your tastes are going to change as you become a more mature person.
All right, rolling on to what's the
Everyone's
next question? I think it was Everins.
Yes. What kinds of gay ships do you like?
Specifically gays.
Specifically gay ships. I find
All right.
that
We're gonna be here a while.
No, you
I
can
need
go
to
first.
pee before we start.
Oh my god. Who wants to begin?
Lee, I feel like you have to begin.
I've already stated my my thing with chemistry, but the characters that I find have the most interesting chemistry are characters where they have two outwardly different ways of portraying the same thing. So one of the ships that is not one that most people have heard of is Luxord and Aqua.
Oh boy.
And what got me into that ship was because they both have in that story, they both had the same problem, the same character flaw, but they portrayed it in completely different ways. They both had the character flaw of feeling like they could not safely be close to people, and they presented it in different ways. Luxord by pretending to not care, and Aqua by either being overcompensating on nurturing or treating her job like it was the most important thing and people second. That she was doing things for the greater good instead of for a deeply personal reason. Staying separate from people emotionally because she is too busy to be able to pour into someone new.
Mm.
And that was that conversation that we had was really eye-opening and really made me actually start really loving the ship.
Sorry for coughing in everyone's ears, by the way.
You heathen.
I am a monster.
That's all right. We'll keep you.
So
You
characters
poor
where their flaws are rooted in the same issue but expressed differently, and characters where their personalities blend in a way that's interesting, where they complement each other to make each other better people. Or even if they make each other worse people, like Ven and Reno, I still like it because I find that their flaws complement each other in a way that's really interesting and fun.
All right, Nate, you're up.
Me,
What do you
I'm
ship?
up. It was supposed to be a gay ship, but someone's not following the rules. Luxord. No, butthead. So.
He's a pretty man in my defense.
He's
In your
a
defense,
beautiful
he-
man.
I didn't have a good example because I had already used Lienzo in an earlier piece.
What, we're gonna mention Liku?
I don't know. Is it
Liku is a very
is it your gay
special.
ship?
Is Liku your gay ship?
No, oh god. I'm throwing my phone on the floor. No, it's not.
It's not that bad. Come on. You don't have to throw your phone on the floor.
I could throw my phone on the floor in a bit of rampage. It's probably fine.
So can we just all agree real quick that Riku is the prettiest girl in Kingdom Hearts?
Riku is the prettiest girl in Kingdom Hearts.
Okay, good.
So, my favorite gay ship. This is hard.
Any ship. Any ship.
like what kinds of the question was what kinds of gay ships do you like? What kinds of ships do you like?
Oh, like what kinds of oh, not like a specific pairing. I think it is like a Mike Dropkins. I think it's right. I probably would say I am a fiend for sad. It's a problem.
You like
so
angst
usually
ships?
a little bit, yeah. As long as it's done correctly. I'm very picky about my angst as well, but I generally like angst ships to some extent. Or maybe even just like relationships that have their ups and downs. There are still is the appeal of the stable relationship. There's an appeal to that, but as far as like reading a story about a relationship, I like ones that have trials, that help them grow as people, that have struggles, because I feel like there's a lot that I see in romance where person sees other person, they fall in love, they hit maybe one obstacle and external that has nothing to do with the two of them, and they don't actually grow as people through the relationship, and they end up together at the end and confetti everywhere. And you're just like, all right, well, I didn't really see any growth or development out of that. So I'm very big on the relationships that have their struggles and their strifes, and they don't always agree with each other, but they make it work. They work together on it. They grow through their relationship. They have disagreements, but they stay together. That's it feels more true to life to me. So when I read these romances where everything is rosy and perfect between the two of them, and life outside of them is just awful and no one appreciates them, etc., I kind of lose interest and I get bored really quickly because I'm like, this just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't connect to me.
Mm.
So I like a little bit of angst with my rosy-eyed romance, I guess. I don't know.
Things that are imperfect feel more real, you know?
Yeah. And it means more to me because of it. The whole argument of a candle in the darkness shines brighter sort of deal.
Aw, that's sweet.
Judge me.
Did somebody say darkness?
Darkness! Submit!
Darkness!
Like, all right, Ansem. It's okay, you can relax.
Van's turn.
Oh, what? It's my turn?
Good morning.
Ships.
Good job,
right,
gamer. So proud. Hatsune.
Yes.
Hatsune.
Hatsune Riku. Best Riku. I had a post on the Kingdom Hearts Amino actually about the different ships that I have, and I've been trying to put together like a common thread, and I'm just not finding one. I'm trying, but I'm just not finding a common thread.
I mean, it's supposed to be, I guess, more like your favorite and less like your only. You don't have to be exclusive. You can have poly-gay relationships. This is not working.
What?
You can have poly-favorite ships. I have no idea.
You know, I actually don't have any OT3s.
I liked
Poly
the
relationships,
I liked the OT3 AU.
Yeah, poly relationships, I imagine, are pretty difficult to write.
Mm-hmm. They're hard enough to have.
You'd think that as someone in a poly relationship that I'd be able to write one easier, but that is not the case. It's actually really hard.
I mean, every relationship is personal. Sorry, go ahead.
You have to overcome the biases of the reader also, because it's very ingrained in culture as well. So it's more difficult to write it realistically when you have to suspend the disbelief of the audience. But also, a good relationship has struggles. But if you have struggles, then people are going to point at it and say, well, there's more than two relationships, there's more than two people. Of course there's problems, and they don't see it as... You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's every relationship is unique on its own in the sense of like every character is going to have their own struggles, and then when you try to add a third character into it to stay true to all those characters without misrepresenting poly units is just a mess. Honestly, I generally prefer things like two of them are romantic and one of them is just like a lifelong friend because it makes it easier to have that emotional connection, which of course to me is the only darn thing that matters, and still have that be something that the audience can accept.
Mhm.
Suriku is a good bro TP. Sorry, Sora said it, and I had to agree with it. It was important.
No, I get it. Suriku is a fantastic bro TP. The way that they build each other up is fantastic.
They're so cute.
I do like that as an example of the issue with a lot of fiction is that the importance of friendships tend to be downplayed.
Yes.
Whereas, so do you have a thingy that you want to say on that?
I said yes, and I was just agreeing because it's really important. Go on.
No, that's basically it.
Oh. Yeah, no, it's.
Oh wait, this is a.
Definitely... This is a clicky sound.
I don't know where I was. I don't know where I was going with that actually.
I will say that friendship is hugely downplayed in most things that I see and read, and it breaks my little heart.
Atara's back.
Hi, Atara.
Atara has returned. And Kim's is quack trash. This is the status update.
Podcast isn't over. We were waiting for you.
I mean, not like just sitting here in silence waiting for you, but we were waiting for you.
Yes, we waited for you.
All right, I will be right back. Everyone made food except for me, so I'm gonna go find a brownie.
All right, well, I have brownies. That's all I have. That's all I can say about that.
I'll be back in like a minute or 3.
Okay, sounds good.
He's on a brownie hunt. So, are there any other aspects that we want to talk about while we're waiting for him? Because I want him here for Atara's question.
I mean, I could always ramble more about friendship. You know, I could do that. But apparently my house is going to be raided in like 2 minutes. So, you know, stuff happens.
We can riot.
I support this. Riot. Yeah.
We can talk about ships some more.
Yeah.
There's always ships.
One other ships that I like.
Shops.
I don't know. There's just so many.
I think that, let's see. Oh, your what's it called? I want to say serialized monogamy, but I feel like serialized isn't the right word. But you know what I'm saying. You have a mini spiel that about relationships not existing in OTP format forever.
I mean, yeah, that is something that I've done that helps me in particular, because a lot of people will be like, okay, if I ship Axel with Roxas, that's it. They're married from the moment they lay eyes on each other. And I'm like, I personally enjoy the Axel and Roxas ships, but I also enjoy Lee and Yenzo, Axel and Zexion. Like, I like the ability to explore multiple ships with different characters. And the way that works for me, if I want to put it in a canon stream, is Axel and Roxas were together for a while. Obviously, Roxas was made unavailable through certain events, and their relationship wasn't going to last forever anyway. Like, it just doesn't have a kind of longevity that you would expect. And then Axel will be dating Zexion, something like that. Because in real life, you don't generally marry the first person you date. Generally speaking, being a high school sweetheart is unlikely. So that helps me in particular when I'm going through different ships with multiple characters. If someone ships character A with character B and I ship character A with character C, I can maintain both of those things as true and explore and respect both of those relationships fully. And it cuts back on a lot of the crazy, like, your ship's not real, I'm going to take out your liver, and like the hostility that I usually see around shipping.
Shipping wars.
But that's something else that I really enjoy, especially writing over a when we write, we tend to explore. That's essentially it, gamer.
I love that. That's great.
But what was I talking about?
I don't know, but
Right.
Sora's doing a good thing right now.
When you're writing something that takes place over a period of time, or you're exploring a character's backstory, they're most likely not in their first relationship. Even if you're writing an older character, they're probably not in their first relationship. They've probably dated someone before. You've probably got to flesh out things about their past, and chances are that a character is going to grow over time. So the characters that I ship with Axel and the characters that I ship with Lee are different characters, because they wouldn't fit together if you mixed it up any other way. For example, something that we even explored, me and Guile did, was if Lee recompleted and Zexion did not. That wouldn't work in the long term because there's a barrier there. And we did it the other way around. If Enzo recompleted and Axel did not, things wouldn't work because of XYZ reasons, because they both needed to grow up. And you take the kind of character development that Lee has, even if you're going in a canon sense. If you're going in a canon sense, the character development that Lee has in like Dream Drop onward is going to be a different character than in 358/2 when he was potentially shipped with Roxas. He wouldn't fit with Roxas now because Roxas hasn't gone through the same kind of character development, and it's okay that they've grown apart in that way.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily mean that like they wouldn't be friends or they wouldn't speak or anything crazy like that. It's not a pass-fail system. People evolve, their relationships evolve.
Mm-hmm. And I think that that's something that's really important. Oh no, burnt popcorn's the worst.
That's so tragic.
Van, are you back?
No.
Nope, he's not here.
Yeah, so what are we what's the question?
I wanted to answer Atara's question when you got back.
All right, I'm back.
All right, so now we can get to Atara's question from earlier. So
you have
the
that
question
written down,
was,
right?
yeah, I have it written. So the question was, why do you think that writing elitists look down on fanfiction and OCs?
Who wants to start on that one?
Do you want to start?
Yeah, since
Sure.
I was that asshole, I will start.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to swear? I'm sorry.
Yes. Yes, we are.
All right.
So
since I was that asshole, I'll start. I looked down on people who wrote fan fiction and roleplayed as canon characters and all that as it being easier. than developing your own things and just taking this pre-made template and doing what you want with it. But it turns out that taking those already existing characters and already existing situations and adapting them to what you're trying to do is actually harder than creating a character from the ground up, I think. Well, not harder, but just a different skill set. Because
It's challenging
when
in
you
a different
create,
way.
right,
Sorry.
when you create your own character and your own world, you're developing it as you go. You don't have anything to work off of, no guidelines, which is very freeing. You basically make things up as you go, but at the same time, you have to create everything. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I'm not great at explaining things.
No, it makes
I just punched myself right in the ear. Great.
So, I mean, that's probably helping.
So, Nate, do you want to go next?
But yeah, basically not understanding the difference between the skill sets.
Right.
And sure. Let me see. Similar to that note is I actually started writing all original content. I didn't really do fan fiction until later on, and I didn't publish it for a long time too, because I was generally intimidated by people going like the well actually groups where they're like, well, you know, that person's favorite color is actually fuchsia, not magenta, and you're dead to me. So like I was very scared of fan fiction for a while because you had so many rules to operate within already. The world already existed, only I didn't have the benefit of knowing all the rules off the top of my head. So I was actually intimidated by fan fiction for a while, but I think the mentality of elitism from writers who don't write fan fiction is because they've made it all themselves, and they think of that as like someone not doing that as inherently like lesser because you didn't do as much work as they did, which is not true. Like what Van was saying is it has its own set of challenges. You have to operate within rules that you didn't make. Also, depending on where you're going with your story, you might be exploring a part of the world they didn't actually develop, but you need that aesthetic to adhere with the rest of the world that's already there. So there's definitely a lot of work that does go into having fan fictions and working in a world with characters that are already developed and set in stone. You have to respect what's already there, but you're probably building on it as well. So it kind of adds to it in its own way. I think the elitism comes from needing to feel like you are more skilled of a writer than someone who has funny ears has to rely on something else, when that's really not the case.
Mm-hmm. I think that a lot of elitism comes as well from lumping together the new people as the whole of the group, the OCs that have like 800 bazillion magic overpowered powers that cannot be killed but are also loved by everyone and is the romantic partner of the main character of 12 different series, and they're all fighting over them. Like the original characters that are based in OCs in particular, the original characters that are based in wish fulfillment and you know, that fantasy are a lot more appealing to the person who is writing them than the person who is reading them. So you find people who are elitist who are thinking that this person wants to be the most important thing in the entire universe, but that's wish fulfillment. That's not really for you. And if a character is if an original character within a fan work is overpowered and they're trying to use them in something that is social, like a role play, then you have that ability to try and teach them how to write a better character. And from there, you have that barrier of the elitists don't want to. The elitists don't want to help someone to create something better. They just want to look down because they think that they they think that they already have something better. They think they already have those skills, which a lot of the times they don't. A lot of the times people's original works, because they're not used to working within somebody else's rules, they just make up their own, and they end up with a lot of the same problems.
You were saying a thing, Van.
Just that's a heck of a username.
Oh yeah, it is.
Wow.
Ooh. Nice, Kims. But I definitely agree that a lot of the elitism does come from that. It's a good point to make, is that a lot of people who are in fan fiction, the thing with like publishing and official works, self-publishing, that kind of thing, is you still have editors. You have a bunch of people who stand between you and the public. So your final draft is going to go through way more revisions than, say, a fan fiction where that person might have been the only one who set eyes on it. So, and that's okay. It's not bad. It just feels there is definitely a need to be like, this person is not as experienced as me, therefore I'm going to look down on them, which it doesn't necessarily make sense, because we've all been inexperienced. We've all gone through that kind of thing where our writing wasn't perfect. When I first started roleplaying, I was breaking rules left and right, and I didn't realize it. And I was lucky enough to work with people who were patient enough with me to explain to me what I needed to do, versus if they just come to me and said, you're horrible and you suck, I probably would have just stopped roleplaying altogether. So,
and noting on what Itara said, I personally believe that elitism comes from the ability to have complete control over your story instead of using rules someone already created, and I think that is a good point. But and like I mentioned before, that elitism a lot of the time is based in them just not wanting to have to follow rules. Yes. But also they're not particularly good at it because they've never had to follow any rules.
And to the credit of fanfiction writers, honestly, having limitations on your writing can make you more creative, because you have to operate within these parameters in order to get a story out the way that you want it. In a lot of ways, it does force you to be more creative than if you can just change the rules so that you don't have to do something hard.
I think that's why I think that fan fiction is really important for new writers to explore, because when you learn how to follow rules and be able to subvert them without breaking your world, then you're able to write better rules. You can't write rules as easily if you know that at a whim you can change your mind on that rule. And it's a lot more tempting to just not follow the rules if you made them up, and no one's going to call you on it, you know?
Basically.
So we've got about 15 minutes left. I think that calling it at around 4 would be best. So we'll take our last round of questions. If anything has anything else.
Oh wow,
or add.
It's been a while. All right, let me read Atara's thing.
Yeah. About world expanding, I did that with one of my writing club challenges. I extended the land of departure to be a terrain.
I remember that one.
I remember that one too. You travel using your Keyblade armor. I even made a little cameo with Propto, the waiter in a smoothie shop, which was adorable. Yeah, and being able to work within the bounds of a world, but be able to create more. Like, I love when people create their own original worlds, but they explain, like, especially in Kingdom Hearts is really good for this, creating your own original worlds, but like being able to work within the boundaries of the rules of how Kingdom Hearts work. Like, one of the role plays that the three of us did, I created a new world that was based off of the Miyazaki films, and I found ways to incorporate it into the Kingdom Hearts mythos. I found a way to make it work within the rules. And when rules were pointed out to me that I had missed, then I made adjustments to how the world worked, and we worked our narrative around that. And I feel like that's a really important skill to have.
And honestly, when I finish something, a piece or whatever, and I'm like, I loved that story. It was great. I want more. That's when I turn to fan fiction, and there are expansions on the world. There are different aspects of a character that I didn't consider. Fan fiction for me is a way to
I don't
have
think your
more
name
of a
existed
story
yet
without just
at the
repeating it.
time. I'm responding to Itara. I don't think your name existed when
It
that
didn't
was
exist
made.
when we created that. Also, your name is a Makoto Shinkai film, isn't it?
Is it? Oh yeah, it is. I think.
I'm pretty sure it's Shinkai, not Miyazaki.
In any case, it was good that you.
As you were saying.
I personally like the expansion process. I do enjoy seeing more of a world that the original piece might not have been able to touch on. For example, if you are looking at Kingdom Hearts with Organization 13, well, there are a lot of people in Organization 13, and there were a good number of members that didn't get the attention I wished they had. But you couldn't go over that in canon because of the way the plotline was going. Luxord, Merlucia, Larxene, Demix, they weren't really at the center of it, so you had to focus on the characters who were involved. Adding in the characters who weren't involved would have just slowed down the plot and the story.
Marluxia and Larxene have a ton of character development.
Marluxia actually has backstory too, thanks to the
Right, yes,
Unchained
the addition
stuff.
Unchained, yes. Sorry, it was something that I've heard a lot of people complain about those particular organization members in particular, saying they wish they had more development, but that was also prior to Lumaria things.
Luarium.
So, Luarium. I don't know. Lumaria. He's just a pretty man, but I can't say his name.
He's a beautiful man.
So but it was something I was just using as an example of fan fiction as a place that characters who didn't get attention in the original plot for necessary reasons can get more attention. So I personally enjoy it.
That's such a cool tree.
I gotta look at the tree.
I like that it's
It's independent.
I like trees like that in real life also.
It marches to the beat of its own drum.
If anything, I'd make the trunk a little thicker. But Asuna also had a question when we're done with this one.
Yes, what is it?
It's about race, I think.
Bye, Tara.
Bye, Tara. Good to have you.
Tara. Thank you for coming.
It's been real.
Suna said, I'm trying to scroll back, but it keeps. Asuna, can you reword that? I'm having trouble understanding what the I'm having trouble understanding what the question is. Hakuna Atara.
Itata.
Oh, no problem. Grammar is hard, just in general.
Yeah, that's why I end up with a lot of word salads just spewing out my face.
Word salad. Yummy, yummy.
Yummy, yummy.
You're fired.
I've actually seen people make because Everin asked if people could make a world in Minecraft if they can't draw. Making things in Minecraft is so magic to me. I have so much trouble playing Minecraft. So
Bye,
I think
Kyrie.
it's definitely bye, Kyrie. Bye. I think that it's definitely a really what was I talking about? I got distracted.
Minecraft. art.
Yes, I think that it's a really cool medium of being able to create such amazing things. I've seen some really, really cool things made with it. Especially Krinsler is particularly good at making like functioning magic rooms. They're so cool.
I just keep making empires and then making a new empire. Totally fine. So the question was a bit rephrased, I think. But I think we might have gotten, there were a few.
So, let me scroll back because I got bumped back to the bottom. So is the question about writing characters of different races? Is that an accurate way of phrasing your question? I think it's a question about writing characters of different races.
It sounds about right to me.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that that's the general idea of the question. Does anyone want to start us off? We've got a couple minutes left.
If you're talking about like I don't mind starting off if that's all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you're talking about like real life races, not like centaurs and unicorns and the like, honestly, one of the best things that's been most helpful to me is you would not believe the travel guides that like are how helpful they are, because they'll condense what a general culture is like in another country that's designed for someone who doesn't live there. So it's really, really helpful place to start, because at least you know how the culture is supposed to be. Then you have your character and how they interact with that culture. There might be things that they adhere to, things they don't adhere to. I mean, think of Viktor Nikiforov, Yuri on Ice. He's Russian. Russia is hugely against homosexuality. Obviously, he is very for homosexuality. So, yeah, you have an understanding of their culture, and then you can go with how that character interacts with it, expanding further into how that impacts the setting they're currently in. So, because they might not be in the country they're from, necessarily.
But they're going to be impacted by their culture.
Yes, and the culture that they have versus its race o'clock. Anyway, the culture that they're from is going to be different from the culture they might be currently near, and their understanding of both cultures is going to be impacted. So when you have that many levels of things to consider, having travel guides just from online and in libraries and things like that is honestly very helpful, because it is designed for you to understand even if you don't live there. That's the point. So it's one of the most helpful things I've used.
And if we're
actually
talking,
really smart.
That's a really good way of going about it. The something I'll touch a little bit on mythical races. The thing to remember is that if you are writing a mythical race, look up what already exists about it. A halfling is not half one thing, half another thing. A halfling is a hobbit. That's a word that already means something. There are rules already established that you can subvert rules for different mythical creatures, but only to a certain point. You need to make it work within why do people think this is the case if that is not true. If it's already accepted mythos that you can kill a vampire by hitting them through with a wooden stake. That's accepted mythos, and if you're going to have vampires in your story, you need to understand that if you're going to subvert that, you need to call attention to it, or find a way to not call attention to it, because somebody's going to point out the mythos that already exists. And that's something that you need to mind.
It's really interesting if you can take the existing mythos and acknowledge it, but twist it. Like, acknowledge what the commonly accepted versions are. And
For
Vampire-
example,
give it your own life.
for example, the Wisconsin time universe, we have a lot of subverted versions of how already existing creatures work. We've added a lot of rules to the way that incubi work and subverted some of the rules of how they work that make more sense within our story, for example.
And honestly, vampires were a good example because they've existed in so many cultures throughout so many generations of history that, like, there's so many different mythos with vampires. In India, their heads come off and shoot tentacles out, and they attach to the roof of a house, and they suck the life out of everyone in the building.
Happens.
Like, yeah, that's a very different interpretation of a vampire than in China, than in England. There's a lot of different types of vampires. And that's another thing that you can look at when you subvert tropes. You can say this is a different subspecies of incubi or whatever. They developed separately because the original race branched off, and these ones live here, these ones live here, so they've developed differently. They are still races. They'll be impacted by things like evolution. So these vampires can't be killed with a stake, but they can't cross running water. If you throw rice on the ground, they have to stop and pick up every single grain. Like, there's a lot of lore with vampires that impact culturally. So when you're looking up mythos like that, there are a lot out there, and you can still treat them like a standard race in the sense that you could say, oh, I'm a different offshoot. I'm not impacted by this, but I am impacted by this kind of thing.
And in terms of, like, and if you're writing things with, like, angels and demons and things like that, in our Wisconsin story, we did a minor adjustment to sort of explain the why in all images, why in, like, most paintings of angels are angels white. We explained that to a human, an angel looks like generally the most uncomfortably pretty person that they can see. They don't look the same to everyone. There are general features that are going to be similar, but their facial structure is going to be whatever the most beautiful thing you can imagine is.
So of course, white people
something
would draw angels white.
Right.
Racism.
racist. But alternatively, something like supernatural lore, angels, if they talk to you, make your ears bleed. If you look at their true forms, your eyes will explode out of your head and you're probably going to die. Like, there's a lot of different ways to interpret things like angels.
So even things where there is a lot of accepted culture, you need to understand the mythos to subvert it. Make sure that if you are writing a fictional race, especially if you're making one up of your own, make sure that you understand what already exists for one thing and how those are interpreted in fiction.
Exactly. And when you make rules for yourself, adhere to them.
Mm-hmm. The thing about creating your own rules for your world is that they are there to give your world structure. Things generally should not break your own rules. They're there to make your world make sense to a reader.
But if you do end up breaking the rules, do acknowledge that and either fix the broken rule or have the characters too be confused at why this rule is broken. Either way, just keep it consistent.
Consistency is key.
Yeah.
So,
any other questions?
Any final questions before we close out? Any final questions in the chat here before we wrap things up?
I mean, the only thing I could think to possibly add at the moment is that if you do break your own rules, have the consequences exist. That's it.
Really?
Something like here comes the Dragon Age nerddom. But if
God.
there's a thing in Dragon Age called the Veil, and it separates the real world from the Fade, the magic side of the world. And in the third game, some douche breaks the Veil. So there is a world that the Fade never touches. There's the rule that the Fade never touches the real world, except then someone broke the Veil, and there were a ton of consequences because of that. If you break a rule, a standard rule like the Fade never touches the real world, there has to be consequences. And you spend the entire third game trying to put the Fade back in its box and restore the Veil. So something like that. If you
That's explaining.
So that's literally breaking a rule.
Hey.
But I just want to let you guys know that I had a ton of fun doing this. That I was initially absolutely terrified, but I hope you guys had a good time. So
I hope that you guys all enjoyed this. I'm really looking forward to the interview that should be happening next Saturday at 1 p.m. So starting the same time as this one, 1 p.m. EST. And we should have Quentin Flynn be joining us.
if he can learn how to use a phone.
If I can overcome the tech barrier that he's facing at the moment, then we should be able to have Quentin Flynn join us. We should have some people from Kingdom Hearts Amino be joining us on the call for asking questions. Overall, this went really, really well. If you are interested in hearing us talk more about writing after the event, we will be doing bi-weekly writing lessons and questionnaires in the same format, and those will probably be around the same time, around the 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock EST zone. So those will be happening in May and onward.
Because if we do them in April, then I will cry.
Well, we don't have time to do them in April because every Saturday we're doing a different podcast. So
other people.
On the front page, look for the post on the featured feed that is the Square Enix Fandom Unity event, and that has our schedule for all of our podcasts for the next month. We have one every single Saturday until April 28th.
It's so exciting.
Then we're going to take 1 week off, and then we'll start the writing podcast again because I'm going to need a week off. And the writing podcast will be bi-weekly.
And up until then, we do have a writing guild on this Amino. So if you want to talk shop at any point, then we can do that in that chat over there.
Mm-hmm. We have a weekly writing prompt that goes up. I didn't get a chance to put it up yesterday because I was talking about the event. So that should be going up either tonight or tomorrow. All of the snapshot prompts are available on my account here under the Writing Guild wiki. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Thank you guys all so much for joining us. And
Yes,
I hope that
thank
you
you.
guys really
Awesome.
enjoyed this.
Yeah, thank you all for coming to listen to us talk.
Rose petals do count as style. You don't know anything, Lexius.
Poor Lex, man. Poor Lex.
Thank you guys for joining us. I'm really glad that you guys seem to enjoy it. And if you like hearing our voices, then we'll be back every Saturday for the rest of our lives.
You'll have so many opportunities to hear Lee be 154th British.
Approximately 154th.
All right,
So,
I'm gonna
yes,
drop
you
out
all-
so I can finally find myself a brownie.
Yes, and
Okay.
I also need to eat. So
Well, yeah,
bye,
real food
everyone.
is- All right,
Bye.
bye everyone. It's been great.